Hey y'all, I'm Ada K. And I must confess, I'm a trial junkie. I enjoy viewing trials as if I was the seated juror. So grab a cup of java, get comfy, and join me as we hop into court. And don't forget to comment, like, and most importantly, subscribe. And if you're really enjoying the channel, please join our membership. Welcome. Good morning. We're here for another day of trial. We have two trials going on this morning. We have the Melody Walker Farris trial going on, as you can see here, and the Sarah Boone trial going on. I will be living two different lives today. So welcome on in. You will see me talking sometimes and you won't hear anything. It's because I'm on the other live. So everybody just sit down, grab yourself a cup of coffee, and let's get ready for court. My gosh, it's going to be a busy day. Good morning, everybody. Live on simultaneously on two different lives. The Sarah Boone and the Melody Walker Farris murder trial. Both women unveiling their loved one, one via suitcase and one via lead shooter and burn pile. Wow, these women are cray. Boy, well, she looks warm and cozy this morning. Over here, Miss Melody Walker is in a black turtleneck, as always. And today she's got a knitted cardigan on with her classic pearls, her and her pearls. So we will be having both lives going on at the same time. I understand that Boone is going to be getting a lot more of the attention, but I still am going to stream this so people can go back and watch later if they wish to do so. I suspect the prosecution may be getting ready to rest their case in that trial. I don't know. They've kind of thrown some curveballs. It's been interesting. Over here with the Melody Walker Farris trials, I found that the attorneys have finally found their voice and started objecting after the judge kind of admonished them because of the irritation they exhibited, with the witnesses answering. And the judge's response to that was, "You groomed them. You taught them what to expect by nobody objecting and letting them run amok." So after that kind of comment, there's been a few more objections, not a whole lot. Hello, Toy. Hello, Dawn. Good morning. I go on YouTube and talk with. Welcome, Dawn. So just so everybody knows, I am giving away a Starbucks tumbler at the end of the month. If you subscribe, that's one entry. You must put I subbed and it will be verified. And then the other one is if you become a member, you get 10 entries for a maximum of 11 entries for the mug. The tumbler, they are Halloween themed. You get to pick from one of three. So, yes. Good morning. The judge is up and ready to go in the Farris trial. We are waiting for opening statements in Miss Boone's case. We got the movement. You guys, we are ready. Are you ready? I wish I had my drum roll. Do I have a drum roll on this? I don't know if I do. I don't think I do. Nope. I have chimes. Next. No drum roll, me sorry. But I do got the Boone horn up and ready to go. Oh, I have a rib that's a little bit not happy this morning. I got an unhappy rib. soon as this gets going, I've got to make me some coffee. Well, they have talking and standing. It looks like objections, but there's no sound yet in the Melody trial. So stick with us, guys. It'll happen. And I thought we were going to get going. I am anxious to see if she's got that same suit on. And I'm going to wonder, is she going to wear that same suit every single morning every single day of trial? That would be interesting. I'm going to get coffee going. I had a hard time waking up this morning. Well, guess what, guys? No water. I'll be right back, y'all. I'm sorry about that. Me be right back. Nothing like a tomato in the morning for breakfast.
All right, you have a seat. I'll remind you you're still under oath. All right, jurors. While y'all were gone yesterday, we had some discussions, and we have some.
And here we go in the Farris trial.
It's probably going to take, I'm going to guess, an hour and a half. Could go longer, but in any event, what we've decided to do is try to go 12:31 today, and then excuse y'all for the day. We'll then take a regular lunch break, maybe even longer, so they can prepare, and then we have some things to take up outside your presence. Like I said, that's going to take an hour and a half to 2 hours, so we're going to work the rest of the afternoon, and if we have some extra time, we may jump ahead to the instructions I will give you at the end of the case, and we'll talk about those a little bit. So that is our game plan. That's why y'all didn't get lunch menus this morning. We will, break at a logical point around noon, and then excuse y'all for the afternoon. I wish we had thought about that and discussed that.
Oh my gosh, coffee is so good the first thing in the morning.
Y'all could make plans for today, but that didn't happen. So anyway, so y'all know what to expect. All right, so we'll still take a morning break and maybe take a 15-minute break to let everyone stretch and go outside.
Okay, so those who are
Right.
interested in the
Over to,
Farris possibility,
good. You need
the
camera,
jury will be in only half a day.
computer.
This case may rest sooner than later. We expected this case to go for
Maybe
3
attempting
weeks.
to do the internet
I'm
call
not
again,
sure.
so we'll see how that works.
He mentioned something about jury instruction, so we'll
I
see.
believe that's after this witness.
Oh, Dawn, you have a French press? I have one of
Good
those too.
Am I good to go, Judge?
I use
Go
that
ahead.
at home.
Good morning. Is it detective still or sergeant?
Sergeant Kuykendall.
Sergeant Kuykendall.
Oh,
What division are you with now?
I'm in criminal investigation.
getting comfy?
Okay.
I'm ready to go. Come on.
My name is John Luke Weaver, and I, along with Michael Ray, represent Melody Farris. So I want to go back and talk about what were your job responsibilities in 2018?
I was assigned to the day's persons unit, and I worked under Sergeant Hands.
In the what persons unit?
Persons crimes unit.
Okay.
And I worked with Detective Hayes, and Sergeant Hands was our sergeant at the time.
And who?
Sergeant Hands.
Okay. So y'all were the persons crimes unit.
Yes, sir.
What is that? I mean, every case would involve a person. So could you be a little more specific what that would mean?
Correct. So criminal investigations at that juncture was divided into several units. So we had a crimes against children unit that investigated crimes against children. We had a night shift family violence unit. We had a property crimes unit that looked into thefts and burglaries. We also had a financial crimes unit that dealt with fraud. So on days persons, we worked non-family violence crimes against persons, which would include everything from shootings, stabbings, robberies, rapes, but it would be under the non-family violence part of that. So neighbors fighting would fall under us, things of that nature. But if something happened during the day that was family violence, that was like a shooting or a stabbing, we would still respond to it and investigate it. And generally we would keep those cases.
So technically this case would not have fallen under what you guys normally would do.
That's incorrect.
That's incorrect.
Yes.
Okay. But you just said that you guys were not a domestic violence unit.
Correct. But that's in terms of what cases we were assigned on a daily basis. But like I tried to clarify, if something happened, such as a shooting or a stabbing or a rape or a robbery during the day, we did not separate it out into family violence or not, because the family violence unit worked at night, so they weren't even in the office. So we would go out and investigate anything of a person's crimes nature that happened during the day. And we do generally retain those cases and continue on with those investigations.
So you would generally retain those cases, but you could hand that off to the domestic violence unit.
In certain instances that would happen, but something like a shooting, especially a shooting where we were primarily involved with from the beginning of it, we retain those cases and that investigation. And in something like this, my unit would typically, for something like a murder, because it is something that generally fell under days persons, even if it was family violence, oftentimes we would get called in after hours and we would investigate those cases as a primary case agents. So even if there was a murder, for example, that happened at like 9 o'clock at night and Detective Hayes and I were at home, our phones would ring and we'd come out and generally take lead on some of those cases. Depends on who's available, who they have working, and what is known at the time. But I came in many times after hours and on weekends for kidnappings or armed robberies or murders to assist with everything from becoming the case agent and taking over the case entirely to just assisting, doing interviews and writing search warrants or assisting the crime scene unit and things like that. So we would work effectively cases that would fall into what other agencies would define as like your major crimes or robbery, homicide, things like that. So my unit would take primary on a lot of those cases as well, but not in every case.
So you just said a lot right there, but this is the way I interpret it. Tell me if I'm wrong. You basically work on a first come, first served basis. You're on duty, case comes up, you stay with the case. Is that correct?
In certain instances, yes. In certain instances, we do transfer those cases to the units that would commonly fall under. For example, during like an on-call, for example, if a child crime came out, the on-call detective, regardless of unit, would respond to it, investigate that to the best of their knowledge at the time with everything they could do. And typically, like for example, a child molestation would be transferred to the crimes against children unit the next day, unless that detective retained that case, and that was sometimes left up to supervision.
So, but in this case, when you guys first arrived, what were you doing earlier that day, by the way?
I don't remember.
Okay. And would you typically be with Detective Hayes throughout the day at that time in your career?
We worked our cases were not assigned like in terms of we were partners. They were assigned independently. So I had a caseload, he had a caseload. So he would be working his cases, I would be working mine. Sometimes that would mean that we would work together. Sometimes that means that we just work completely independently.
Okay. But when you were called out to this case, obviously there was no indication that there had been a murder, correct?
When we responded to this case, we responded like we do in every case. It was a death investigation.
So I believe I heard you on a number of recordings say that you investigate every death in Cherokee County.
I don't
Maybe
believe
not
it.
you personally, but Cherokee County Sheriff's Office.
We respond to deaths in the county, but not inside the city limits.
Not inside the city limits of Holly Springs, Canton, Ball Ground.
Typically, but we have been asked to assist them in the past.
Okay. But that's what you did.
We investigate deaths. Yes.
Even natural deaths.
Yes, we do.
Right. Because I heard you say that in interviews.
Yes, sir. We investigate natural deaths, accidental deaths, suicides, homicides.
Okay. Why do you investigate natural deaths? Would that not be something for the coroner to do?
We work in conjunction with the coroner's office to investigate natural deaths because the goal in going out to those is to determine if it in fact is a natural death or if it is a homicide or an accidental death or something else. So we do go out to determine the manner and cause of death in conjunction with the coroner's office for deaths in Cherokee County.
Right. So you noted early in your incident report and in your audio recordings that, I mean, you applied for a search warrant almost immediately.
It was done early in this case, yes, sir, before the house was searched, I believe.
Okay. What probable cause?
I did not obtain the search warrant, so I've never read the affidavit, so I don't know what probable cause was necessarily written in it.
You didn't obtain the search warrant?
I did not write the original search warrant, no, sir.
But you just know that a search warrant was completed before you went in the house?
Yes, sir.
How do you know that?
Because that information was relayed to me by investigators and supervisors on scene.
Did you see it?
I read the search warrant itself, but I don't believe I've ever read that affidavit.
Okay. Do you know if y'all were already saying there was a murder at that time?
At the point in time we responded to the scene, we knew that we had a human remains on appeared to be human remains on a fire, burned to a degree at which none of us had ever seen before in many years of law enforcement experience. We knew that people were already talking away from family members and providing information that had us very concerned. And when we respond to any death investigation, we look at it as a potential homicide from the onset of the case until we find evidence to support that it is not a homicide.
And so that evidence would have been Scott Farris telling multiple people that a gun was missing, yes?
That is not the only information that we had, no.
What
but
other
that is
information?
the degree to which the body was burned. I've been taught in previous homicide classes that bodies caught up in brush fires or caught up on fires are oftentimes not burned up to that degree, and that should be a very concerning thing if you were to see it when you initially respond to somebody that has fallen on a fire. So I have been taught that in homicide schools, that if somebody is in like a brush fire or like even like a little burn pile, but they are like almost gone and all you have is some bones, that is a very concerning thing, and you should take note of that and start looking deeper as soon as you see something along those lines. So that, in conjunction with family members already starting to talk about other family members in terms of everything from potential drug problems to missing guns to also notably potentially blood in the house, all of these things and combined led us to be concerned that this was potentially more than an accidental death or a natural death from pretty much the onset of law enforcement's arrival. Most of that information was gained by even uniformed patrol before Detective Hayes and I made it on scene.
Because Scott Farris was telling multiple people that a gun was missing in the house.
That is one of the factors, but again, not the only factor.
Did you already know that he was telling people that before he got in your car for your interview of Scott Farris?
Yes, sir. I had heard that when
Good morning, Paula MC.
Officers on scene, he had started reporting that
Welcome, welcome. We are doing a duo live today.
He believed it was.
So if you see me speaking and you hear that, that's okay.
Facts combined with how severe the body was burned and how there was almost nothing left of a very large man led us to immediately have.
Thank you, Paula. Hello, Andrielle.
Was was potentially something that wasn't an accidental death or a natural death. So we investigate every case like a homicide from the onset until we have evidence to prove otherwise, and we didn't have any evidence to prove otherwise.
Okay. Tell me about your interview with Scott Farris.
It was done in my car, away from everyone else, so nobody else could hear it. It was audio recorded.
Okay. What did he tell you?
We talked for an hour and a half about everything from the family dynamics.
What time of day was that, by the way? Was the sun still up?
It was around 2 p.m.
So within the first hour of your arrival, you got there about what, 1:30 you said?
Yes, sir. It was around 1:30.
So within 30 minutes of your arrival, he's in the car with you talking to you.
I wouldn't say within, but it was around 2 p.m.
Okay. Within the first hour.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. So he gets in the car
Andriel,
with
no,
you,
we are
and tell me
caught
what he
up with
said.
the Melody Farris trial. We are
Over the course
on
of the time that
point.
we spoke, he talked about some things that he had seen that was concerning in the house. He had talked about the relationship dynamics between Gary and Melody. We talked about just the family history. We talked about Gary's health problems because, again, we're trying to determine if the nature of this case is something that could be an accidental death or a natural death. And we also learned that Gary was reckless with fires and he tended to make very large fires. And we spoke about Gary's, health problems and health concerns and high blood pressure and his spells that he was having. So we talked about an awful lot of stuff.
Sure. So in your report, you noted that Scott told you that the tractor was in an odd spot. Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
All right. And do you remember that he told you that it was normally in a specific place, but it was poorly parked?
He said it was parked in a spot that was odd for the tractor.
I find it interesting that if they heard from him that that tractor normally is not parked there and it's an odd spot for that tractor in the Melody Farris trial, why did you not go and do DNA collection and process that tractor? Just curious.
To be parked.
Okay. And then he also brought up conversations about his mother only having access to Gary's bank account and having his PIN number. That's all access she had. He brought that up to you, yes?
We did talk about the financials, yes, sir.
Okay. So he brought that up to you.
While we were speaking, he did talk about how she has access to a debit card and that's the way she accesses the money to spend it.
And he's the one that said that his mom produced the wallet.
Yes, that was brought up early on as well, is that she had, while looking for Gary and trying to determine if he was still at the residence or had potentially left, one of the things they looked for was the wallet, and she did produce the wallet, yes.
And he's the one that brought up something about a CPAP machine.
Yes, Gary used a CPAP machine every night.
Okay. But then he's the one that tells you the story that, and this is within, again, the first hour of you arriving on the scene. Scott Farris tells you that a few weeks ago, he was helping an AT&T repair guy at the residence. He was looking for a remote and opened the wooden piece of furniture near the door in the living room area downstairs in the basement. When he opened the drawer, he found a leather holster with what appeared to be a .38 caliber revolver in it. Yes, he told you that. It's in your report.
I don't know if that's the exact phrasing, but that's how I paraphrased it. But yes,
Well,
he told me that.
You would agree that's how you put it in your report?
Yes.
And that he had never seen this gun before. And when he checked for the gun again on the 5th, while looking for Gary, he noticed that it was not there. You remember that?
Yes, sir.
Right. And he saw a couple of drops of blood of what appeared to be in the basement. And he did not notice any chemical odor in the area. You wrote all that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And there were no other. And Scott, I asked Scott about the firearms in the property, and he said there was a shotgun in the basement closet and an old shotgun over the door, and also an old rusted .22 rifle. Yeah?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And at that point, he didn't mention that he had a lot of rounds of .38s in his barn apartment, right?
I did not ask him about what kind of ammunition was there.
Right. You didn't ask him about any of his guns, did you?
I think I phrased the question more specifically to the house,
Right.
but I'm not exactly positive on how I phrased the question.
And Was it at that point? Now, okay. So, but you're aware that everything that Scott Farris told you at that point, that was essentially y'all's theory of the case.
Correct, Paula.
From that second on, all the way to this very moment.
That's incorrect.
Why is that incorrect?
Because at that point in time, what we do is we ask questions and we get information, but then we have to take that information and follow up with it to find evidence that supports or refutes it. At the beginning stages of this case, we did know very little. We knew that somebody was reporting a firearm being missing, reporting blood being in the basement. We knew we had a severely burned body on the fire, the likes of which none of us had ever really seen before, to include house fires where houses collapsed on people. So we were investigating this case as truly and honestly as a fact-finding mission to find the truth as you could possibly do, because we didn't know what happened. We didn't know how originally, when we first got there, we didn't know what had to happen to get a body to that stage of being burned. We didn't have that knowledge. We have to ask questions, we have to get the information, and we have to follow up with that information. And we don't necessarily take anything for face value just because somebody said it. We have to go investigate that part of it and find the supporting evidence. And over time, it starts to paint a picture of who's telling the truth and who's lying, and what is factually based and what is not factually based. So we gather information to find the evidence to get to the truth. And part of my initial conversation with Scott, I didn't know how at all Gary got in the fire. I simply was just asking questions to get information because he had information to provide. He wanted to talk, so I needed to know what he was going to tell me and what information he was going to say. At that juncture, we didn't know Gary had been shot, so we had no theories. We had no idea who killed Gary, if he was killed. These are things we just didn't know when I was speaking with him in the first 30 minutes of arriving on scene. It was just to see what information he would tell us. And then the investigation kind of balloons out from there, and we start gathering more information and following up with alibis and talking to more people. So we didn't have a conclusion drawn in the first 30 minutes of this case.
Okay. So you mentioned earlier this class you went to about burned bodies and training. Was that GIPSIC or what?
It was a homicide school or a managing death investigations. I'm not sure which one it was, but it was in one of those, because
Okay.
I've been to several schools relating to death investigations. I don't remember which one it was, but I do remember that they talked about bodies typically just in brush fires or that fall on little burn piles don't end up that severely burned. And so that is something I do remember, but I don't remember which class it was from.
Okay. So in any of those classes at your homicide school, did they tell you that it's very common that there are people that will come to the police first to steer the investigation away from themselves? You obviously were told that in homicide school, right?
That is something I've learned through my career, yes.
Oh, no, he isn't.
So would that not have been suspicious
Ah.
to you that Scott Farris within an hour is pointing you away from him, and he has provided you
Not
with
that
his
I know
mother's
of.
alleged financial motive,
Not that
and
I
a
know
murder
of.
weapon? And nobody had a clue that there had been a murder.
I wouldn't say that that made us necessarily suspicious of him, but right out of the gate, we were doing an investigation.
I believe this is
into
Cross.
what happened to Gary, which included, as the investigation got more and more information, it included investigating Scott. We looked at Scott and his potential involvement into the death of Gary as quickly and as reasonably as we did anyone else in this case that we knew of that we needed to look at. So Scott was investigated for any of his involvement. I believe we forensically analyzed his phone and looked at, I believe phone records were obtained for him. His alibi was sought out and he was interviewed multiple times. So Scott was investigated. It's not something that we just took his word for because he said it.
We'll talk about that because I don't think you were involved in a lot of the follow-up years later investigation of Scott. But at this point, after your interview with Scott, what did you go do? Did you go tell Hayes what he said? What'd you do?
I don't remember if I spoke to Hayes before I interviewed Chris, but the next thing I did was speak to Chris. And that was also done in my vehicle away from everyone else. And that was also audio recorded.
All right. So you went from Scott to Chris. All right. Tell me what Chris told you.
And speaking with Chris, he relayed a lot more of the family dynamics between Melody and Gary and things he had seen and things that his daughters had told him that they had seen. And we spoke about the relationship, and we spoke about the finances. We spoke about him and how the body was found and what his observations were and things of that nature.
Okay. And he told you, you asked him where he was through the last couple of days, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember that?
Yes, sir.
All right. Do you remember what he told you?
Yes, sir. Over the course of, I spoke to Chris twice in particular. And through those two conversations, I did get a list of his timelines from basically the 3rd through the 5th, because Gary was last seen by anybody reasonably on the 3rd, and Chris was one of the last people to have seen him.
Okay. In that conversation, did Chris bring up to you that his parents had been upset about a month before for him stealing from his father? Did you ever find that out?
I don't remember if I spoke to Chris about that or not.
Okay. All right. So at what point did you glean anything else from his interview, by the way?
That Melody was exceedingly upset that there was a beach trip plan that Gary was going to be paying for a condo.
Because he was stealing money from the family.
In that particular case, from the way Chris explained it to me, is that he wanted to go on a beach trip to take his children. He had mentioned it to Gary. And Gary had offered to basically, the way I understood it, was upgrade the room because Gary could afford a nicer room than Chris could afford. So the belief was that Gary would pay for the nicer room and that Melody was invited and that they would all go on a nice beach vacation together, which was supposed to happen, I believe, a couple days after the 5th, but I don't remember the exact date the beach trip was supposed to happen.
Okay. So at this point, had you learned from either Scott or Chris that she was having affairs?
Yes, that came up in our conversations as well.
With Scott and Chris?
Yes.
Okay. So they'd already both told you their mother's having affairs, and the issue with her being angry about money, things like that?
Yes, sir.
That they were taking from their dad?
That their dad was giving them.
Okay. That's your opinion.
That's what they told me.
That's what they told you, right?
Yes.
And that's what you believed.
No, that's just what they told me.
All right. So at what point was it then your job? I think you said yesterday you just kind of went and stood next to the tractor for an extended period of time.
I did. I went and secured the tractor because we knew that it had been moved and it was something that was far away from where we're all standing at because the barn was pretty far away.
Okay.
So I was asked to go stand by with the tractor until a member of the crime scene unit could come and process it.
All right. Did you walk through the barn at any point?
At one juncture, I did follow Lieutenant Stewart, who's on the crime scene unit, as he was photographing, and I walked with him.
You were with him?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so you would have been going back to Stewart photos. So you were over here at this tractor.
Yes, sir.
And do you remember what time of the day? Were you with him when these pictures were? Is that you?
That is me.
Okay. So you were with him when pictures were being taken.
Yes, sir.
Did you? Were you the one that spotted the blood on the step, or was that Stewart?
No, sir. That was not me.
Okay. This blood?
I'm not aware of that blood. He processed the tractor. I did not.
Okay. But why were you staying with him the whole time?
Just to hold things for him and hand him stuff when he needed it.
So you were with him when he took these pictures?
I did follow behind him. Yes.
So you'd have been right there, right here with him. Yes?
Or nearby.
Okay. And you've seen this room in the barn?
I'm not sure what specifically in the barn that I saw at that juncture.
Does any of this ring a bell?
It does look familiar.
Okay. So, how long were you with Stewart before you went back to interviewing witnesses?
I believe when I was with Stewart, it was around 8 p.m. In a certain juncture, I ended up back at the house and in the basement, and that was a little after around 10 o'clock. And that's when I asked the crime scene unit if I could assist with them searching the basement.
Okay. Well, let me stop before we get into the search of the basement. Did you, and I forgot to ask you this, and this was in your report too, when you were talking to Chris. Chris made it a point also, and we're still within the first 2 hours of your investigation. he tells you that his mother has a relationship with, I believe, Rusty Barton. Brings up the name Rusty Barton within the first 2 hours. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that she has a tattoo, XOXO. Yes?
Yes, sir.
And has 2 cell phones. Yes?
Yes, sir. It had come up that I don't think Chris had the specific knowledge of the 2 cell phones. That more came from Scott. But Chris did mention it because I believe he had heard it from Scott.
The XOXO was the tattoo, was the contact in the phone. That's what he told you, Chris.
And I believe he learned that information from his children. I don't believe he had seen that himself, if I recall correctly.
Okay. So let's go back to, oh, and you were also around for the accelerant test, correct?
Yes, sir. I did take photos as Investigator Daniels swab the hands of Melody Farris and Scott Farris.
All right. So in that swab, did anybody ever think to do y'all even have a gunpowder residue test or anything like that?
We do have GSR kits, yes, sir.
All right. Did anybody ever think about doing something like that?
GSR kits, gunshot residue is very short-lived evidence. If a shooting had happened a day or 2 earlier, we're generally not going to be doing gunshot residue kits on people days later. That's something we try to do very quickly after a gun's been discharged.
Okay.
Almost to the point of an exigency to get it because the evidence can be so short-lived.
Sure. What about on a gunshot residue test? I think that's what GSR.
GSR, yes, sir.
Can you do that on like walls and furniture and stuff?
I have not personally done it on a wall or furniture, and I don't know what the GBI stance specifically of that is.
The GBI?
Yes, we send the GSR kits to the GBI's forensics labs for processing. We don't process those in-house. We will collect them, package them, and send them off for testing.
But it's something that could have been done, yes?
I'm not aware if that is a proper use of the GSR kits. I have not done that myself.
So about what time did you go in the house?
I don't remember exactly what time I would have re-entered the home.
Right. But definitely after the warrant was signed, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's what you testified to earlier. So you found this bullet right here.
I did.
All right. What else did you find in the house?
The only other items I recall specifically collecting were a comb, a toothbrush, and a razor.
Right. So you found this bullet. Did you take these? Did you take these pictures?
No, sir.
Because you had a camera with you, right?
At that juncture, I don't believe that I did.
So let's talk about how you found this bullet. Down in this basement area. This would be the basement area?
Yes, sir.
So how did you find it?
Well, after asking Lieutenant Ballard and Melanie Thrasher if I could assist them in searching the basement, I was walking around the coffee table and I looked down and saw the projectile.
All right. Was the ottoman pulled out from the chair like this, or was it up against the chair?
It was not up against the chair when I looked down and saw the projectile.
So this is important, and I just kind of want to talk about everything you saw at that time before anybody else saw this bullet. You didn't see any blood at all on the chair, right?
I had not seen any blood on the chair, no, sir.
And did you see anything that appeared to be broken or out of place?
I don't know necessarily what would be in place or out of place, but I didn't see any blood and I don't recall seeing anything broken.
Well, you saw a bullet and you believe that to be out of place, right?
I did, yes.
And you saw some blood on the floor. You believe that to be out of place, right?
I didn't go specifically look at the blood because they were processing it and taking photographs at the time. So I stayed pretty far back, but yes, I did see the projectile on the ground. And when you see a bullet with blood on it, it does look out of place when you have a body that's severely burned on a fire.
Okay. But right here in this picture, which is a zoomed in version of this, there was no other blood around this bullet, right?
I'm not sure. As soon as I was looking in the area and I saw the bullet, the crime scene processing unit was only a couple feet away. So I got their attention and I stepped back and let them process and collect the evidence.
But you didn't see that. You didn't see any blood, correct?
I didn't see any blood
Right.
next to the bullet, no, sir.
Right. And you didn't see any holes in the chair or anything like that?
No.
All right. Because that would make sense. You know, if a bullet has been shot and somehow it's underneath an ottoman, that it would probably go through the ottoman, would it not?
That's an inaccurate statement.
Well, then you tell me.
Well, very simply, I don't know what the bullet hit when it was fired, and I don't entirely know exactly what it would have struck or not struck.
Detective Cockendall, I understand that it's been kind of made out that you were not very important to this investigation, but on July the 5th of 2018, you were important to this investigation, were you not?
I do believe that I was an important player and investigator in this case, so I don't think that I
You
would
don't
say
think
I
you
was
were, or you do? I couldn't hear you.
I think that I am an important part of this case, yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. So at that time, you're in the basement, you find the bullet, and you don't think it's important to look around and see, oh, could this have ricocheted off of anything? Should we look into that? Should we take pictures of that? Yes?
I turned the scene of, as soon as I found the bullet, I turned it over to our crime scene processing unit because they have a lot more advanced training than I do in evidence collection. And I let them photograph. And of course, I looked around to see if I could see a bullet hole or any other evidence. And I just didn't see anything that hadn't already been spotted. The only thing I saw that hadn't already been observed, notated, or photographed or marked was the bullet.
So as this case is going on, this jury has heard from a number of witnesses, crime scene techs along the way, crime scene tech Thrasher. Would you believe her to have been the one in charge of the house?
I'm not sure from a crime scene perspective who was in charge of searching the crime scene.
And I think this has been hard for us as we've sat here through this trial to figure out who's actually in charge of this case and this crime scene. But tell me if this is an accurate statement. Crime scene techs take information from detectives to find what to look for, yes?
Yes.
All right. So then detectives, they get information from crime scene techs to know what questions to ask. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So, but it kind of seems as if there's no real organization in this crime scene. Did you feel that this crime scene was unorganized at the time?
No, sir.
Can you tell me why not?
Well, the scene was organized. We had a number of supervisors on scene. We had captains, lieutenants, sergeants. We had a case agent. And the scene was organized, but the scene was large. So any one person is going to be likely not know what all the other people are responsible for doing because they know what their task is. So there was organization on the scene and it wasn't disorganized.
Who was running this whole case at that time?
We had, well, there was a number of supervisors that were there that were running various aspects of the case. We had Captain Pinion at the time was there. Lieutenant Darrell Clark was there. Lieutenant Ballard was there. Lieutenant Carter was there as well at one juncture. We had Sergeant Shaw was over at the burn pile for a large portion of it. And when I found the bullet, Lieutenant Ballard was in the basement with Melody Thrasher as they were processing the blood that was found next to the bar.
Okay. So here's where I want to know. On this crime scene, where did the buck stop? Who was the final say on this crime scene? There had to be one.
Well, in this particular case, what I was being tasked with, I was being asked to perform specific job functions for the most part, and I was accomplishing those job functions and then either reporting back to Sergeant Hands or Detective Hayes. So from my perspective, those are typically, I was getting asked to do things like stand by the tractor. Once I completed that, I went back to find out what else I needed to do.
Okay.
So very specifically, I responded back to my direct supervisor or Detective Hayes, who was the case agent.
But it appears, and tell me if I'm wrong, that there were multiple leaders on this crime scene, correct?
There had to be because the scene was so large. So at a certain juncture, for example, at the barn, when Sergeant or Lieutenant Stewart, I don't know his rank at the time, when he was at the barn processing the barn and no other crime scene techs were around, he was responsible for that area of the property. He was responsible for processing that. And then you had the area of the burn pile, and then you had the area of the home. So yes, there was different levels of supervision, plus the structure of any police agency is a rank-based structure. So you have investigators and detectives who answer to sergeants, and the sergeants answer to lieutenants, and the lieutenants answer to captains. And when you have all of those on scene, they do have different areas of responsibility. So it's not disorganized, there's just a rank structure. And yes, different people are in charge of different aspects of the case.
All right. So but it seems very chaotic on this crime scene from everything that's been presented to this jury.
I wouldn't describe it as chaotic. There was a lot going on, and if anyone wasn't aware of what was happening from the outside looking in, I can't know what somebody would have seen or thought. But from my perspective, I didn't think it was disorganized. I thought we did have organization. I knew what my job role was, and I knew who to go back and report to.
Were you aware that this was that Thrasher was new in the crime as a crime scene tech? Did you know that?
I don't know how new she was or wasn't.
You didn't know?
I'm not on the crime scene unit.
Was there ever a discussion? Were you involved in any discussion to ever say, because you say you're well trained, and the GBI sometimes is invited to take over crime scenes because they have quite a lot of resources. Yes, and training.
There are agencies that do request the GBI to take over crime scenes, and there's other times where agencies request the GBI to come out and help or assist for something that they are able to further that investigation through their knowledge and expertise, but it is agency dependent.
Okay. But you would agree with me that the GBI is well trained at crime scene intake.
The GBI is well trained, yes, sir.
Okay. So were you around or available for any discussions that would have taken place regarding inviting the GBI to come take over this crime scene?
I was not part of any discussion that discussed the GBI taking part of the crime scene. We have very experienced crime scene technicians that have a lot of training, knowledge, and experience, and we generally retain our own cases, and I'm not aware of any case, and I'm not aware of any case we've ever turned over to the GBI crime scene unit, unless I actually can't think of a single one where we've ever turned over a crime scene to the GBI in whole. Now they have come out and assisted, and they do work officer involved shootings from their perspective, but that's a different thing because they are the ones who handle those.
Okay. So you found the bullet and then left essentially after that, not long after that.
I do believe that I had conversations with Detective Hayes and Sergeant Hands, and then ultimately I did speak with Chris a little bit after finding the bullet.
Now, while you were walking around, had anybody started to talk about we should luminol this house?
That was not a conversation I probably would have been a part of.
All right. And did anybody think about luminoling the barn?
I don't know if that was a conversation. I wouldn't have been a part of that conversation.
Well, the reason I have a problem with that, because at the time you had interviewed multiple very important parties in this case. And if you're not communicating, okay, so this guy over here says there's a bullet, that's you, and this guy says a gun's missing, shouldn't you be communicating with the crime scene techs about what they need to be looking for?
Yes, and that communication was done.
And that was done. And then you kind of communicate it and you leave, but you don't double check and say, hey, did you guys do gunshot residue on the walls? You didn't ask that question?
I did not tell the crime scene unit how to process the crime scene.
Right. It's just like you boom, hand it off. I got to go. That's what you did.
It's not exactly like that. We generally have a discussion. I pass the information up my chain of command and also make sure the case agent knows, and that information is communicated between the different entities, but it's not an accurate depiction of we pass the information off and then we run away and do something else. That's just simply not how it goes. But I also don't tell the crime scene techs how to process the crime scene because I'm not trained in advanced crime scene processing like they are.
And Detective Kuykendall, you would agree with me, and I understand you work for Cherokee County Sheriff's Department, and you have since what year?
I was hired in 2011.
2011. So you've been there, you're a career man. You've been there 13 years. And I wouldn't expect you to say anything adverse to your agency. But you would agree with me that you had never been on a crime scene like this at that time, where you have a crime scene that is a burn pile, you have a crime scene at a house, and also you have other crime scene at a barn. You've got, at least at that point, a tractor with blood on it that had been found. So you have at least 3 different locations in this very large property. You've never been involved in anything like that, yes?
That's an inaccurate statement.
Well, then tell me why I'm wrong.
We've been on plenty of scenes that have multiple scenes, but at the same token, every murder is different. So if the fact of you had a barn, a tractor, a burn pile, and a house, that very specific set of items to process and secure, I'm not aware of that specifically presenting itself, but have we worked crime scenes that are very large and have multiple areas and multiple spots that are roped off prior to this? Absolutely.
Okay. So at what point did you go back to interview witnesses? You, Detective Capital, and I think you are a talk for, I don't know, 2 weeks now, and I don't know that I would get regarded as a polite person, but you are, and you called Chris, and you, which at that time he would have been a suspect, right?
I don't think that at that juncture I could rightly call anyone. I think the best way to describe it is like this. At the very early stages of this investigation, I know most people have heard of Schrodinger's cat. It's both dead and alive in a box all at the same time. It's almost like that. Both everybody's a suspect and nobody's a suspect because we didn't have enough information to rule people in or rule people out.
But you called Chris in the middle of the night and you apologized to him. You said, I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry that I have to tell you this, but there was a bullet found in your father. Do you remember doing that?
Yes, I did call Chris and revealed to him that we found evidence that his father was shot.
And did you do the same thing for Scott?
I did not.
Okay. But you told Chris?
Yes.
All right. And that essentially means that you ruled him out at that point as a suspect.
That is not true.
Why is that not true?
Because it's not.
Yes?
I did.
In the days
response.
Again, since it's not
usually talk to Jenna. Do you
I
remember?
believe it was Tuesday the 10th.
Tuesday the 10th. So you talked to Jenna, and what had Chris told you about where he was or where he was through the hours of the 3rd? Because the jury's familiar with the timeline at this point, so we won't go back through all that. But you received kind of a timeline of the case and the last time that Gary had been seen. So what did you learn about what Chris had been doing?
In terms of which conversation? My conversation with Jenna?
Let's go with what Chris said first.
I had run through Chris's timeline with him, and again, we're not going to go back through it, but I had gotten his timeline from the 3rd through the 4th and through the 5th towards getting back to the house when the body was found. And I did ultimately talk to Jenna to get a statement from her regarding Chris's whereabouts and her accounting of that as well.
Okay, so you knew from Chris that he went to the property on the 3rd.
Yes.
And saw his father about 5:30 or 5 o'clock that day with his daughter Addison. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. And at that point, and it took a long time later before anybody asked this question, but you didn't ask what his dad was wearing, did you?
No, I believe in one of my initial conversations with Chris, I asked him what his dad was wearing.
Okay. What about what his mom was wearing?
I asked that, and I remember I transitioned at one juncture back to what Gary was wearing, and I never clarified what Melody was wearing.
Right. And then they left and they went to where?
I believe they went to a QT to get slushies.
All right. What about after that?
After that, they went home and picked up his wife and then went to Poke City, which is a restaurant that's about a few minutes from their house.
So let's talk about what you did. You talked about Poke City. Did you go down there to Poke City?
No, sir. I was
Just-
never asked to go down there.
You were never asked to go down there.
Correct.
Okay, guys, I am over with the Boone trial because I haven't even started yet. There's a bunch of arguing about exhibitees for the opening statements. I mean, it's driving me crazy that they're having to deal with. We've been live for over 30 minutes and they're arguing law. and all this should have been done yesterday. So yeah, I'm a little bit irritated right now with the lawyers. That said, I'm also letting this testimony go because it's important. But I am listening to both at the same, and no, Adair, you are not leftovers. There'll be times you'll be getting my attention far more than the Boone people, but right now there's shenanigans happening in the Boone court. I'll be right back. Oh, and by the way, I was on Canva trying to create a bingo card and then somebody got one, so we're good.
Um, did you call Poke City?
I did.
And what did Poke City say? They said what?
They said they have video, but they wouldn't give me any information.
No,
about it.
go right ahead.
All right.
You can switch
But
the
you
name.
didn't say, hey, Detective Hayes,
Banshee, you
Poke
can
City
switch
said
it.
they got
It's
video.
okay.
Can I go down there and get it?
No, I would have relayed that information to Detective Hayes.
You would have?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so who would have had to have made the call to say, I need you to go down there and look at that video?
I was never asked to go look at that video, so I did not go down there and look at it.
And you didn't volunteer to do that either, right?
No, sir, because I was being tasked with doing various things and I was accomplishing those tasks to the best of my ability.
And then Chris said he went home and slept that night, right?
So after going to Poke City, he went and dropped Jenna back off at the house and then took Addison to get ice cream or gelatos and then went back to the house and then that's where they slept.
Where'd they get gelatos?
I'm not sure exactly where they got gelatos.
I'm going to pause one stream and I need to share with you. ASL will be interpreting will happen when we have a deaf person on, because I can't physically interpret an trial day by myself. So if there's a hard of hearing or deaf person on and you see me go into interpreting, you know what's going on.
Did you call to check that out?
He was with Addison. I don't remember if I asked that specifically where they got ice cream or not.
Well, that would have helped you with the timeline to know when he got the ice cream and then he got back to the house.
The timeline wouldn't, their house is so far away from, so two things points to that. One, he's reporting being with his daughter. That's something I can verify that she's corroborating that statement that they went and got ice cream when they went back home. So I have a person I could ask that question to. In addition to that effectively the length of time they would have been gone wasn't enough time to get all the way back up to the farm and then get all the way back home because they live like 50 minutes away.
How many minutes?
I think they estimated it was about a 50-minute drive. I recall.
That's your estimate. You didn't check it out. You didn't go drive it.
I did not go drive it. No.
Okay. All right. So they go back to the apartment. You don't know what time because you never checked out when they had gelato, and apparently went to bed. So what did Chris do? Where did Chris sleep in the house?
I believe he slept in a bedroom different than Jenna that night because Addison wanted to sleep with Jenna.
Correct. And you were told that by Jenna, correct? Days later?
I believe I was told that specifically by Jenna, yes.
All right. And, you know, go
I
ahead.
also asked her if she would have known if Chris would have left the house, and she said that she would have been aware if he had left the house that night while they were sleeping.
While she was sleeping, she would have known. But would it shock you that she testified in front of this jury that she didn't know that he got up and left and went to the Peachtree Road Race that day?
I didn't hear her testimony, so I don't know what she said or didn't.
When
Breakfast of
when he
Champions.
left, she really didn't know. Right? You didn't check in on it, is what I'm saying. And so once you found out about this, when did you dump Chris's phone?
I did not dump Chris's phone.
All right. Did anybody? Do you know?
I'm not aware of all of the investigative actions that were done in this case. So I was specifically, again, tasked with accomplishing certain things, and I would go and accomplish those tasks and report them back. So I don't know all of the things that were being done because I wasn't the case agent.
And we don't either, but it appears through all of the reports and everything in this case that you were kind of tasked with Chris and certain other people that were involved in this case, whereas Detective Hayes kind of more focused on Melody. You focused on everybody else. That was kind of, am I wrong?
Yes. I was tasked with talking to specific people at specific times or calling specific locations or going with people for specific things.
And you were just picking up the phone. You didn't go see these people. A lot of them, it was just recordings of phone calls, recordings of phone calls.
Some of them were phone calls, absolutely.
Sure. And you were
And
just,
sometimes we did go, like, for example, I went with Sergeant Westberg down to Burn Foreman to talk to Angela Phillips and his business partner, Eric Durlacher. That's not something we did over the phone.
all right. So you went down there and talked to Angela Phillips, but you didn't go down and talk to Jenna Ferris.
Correct.
Right.
I did talk to Jenna Ferris over the phone.
Did you also not find it weird in the phone call that Jenna Ferris basically ended the phone call with, "Can we be done now?"
I had actually, I believe, had to, because Jenna Ferris was obviously somebody that we did want to talk to because we were trying to speak to her. So if I recall correctly, I had to actually call some family members and try to get them to get Jenna to call me so that I could speak with her.
So, in your opinion, you believe that even though Chris Ferris was ultimately never checked out by any form of cell phone tracking, any kind of tracking, nothing, and his wife said she didn't sleep with him that night, and you didn't go check any surveillance photos or footage from his apartment, right? You didn't check that.
Well, you started out kind of going towards one question, then transitioned into another one.
I'll do a better job. I appreciate you being polite again, Sergeant Kuykendall. I'll do a better job with my question. Don't you think that you should have went and checked to see if there was some surveillance footage of the apartment complex that night when you found out that Chris Ferris did not sleep with his wife?
I was not necessarily independently going and doing a bunch of things. I was being asked to do certain things, getting that information and relaying it back. And then I would.
You
be
didn't
given another
volunteer to
task.
do those things, did you?
No, sir. I was being tasked with doing them or asked to do them, so I did them.
Right, but you're a detective. That's your job, right?
It is.
You are to investigate crimes. You are to go talk to witnesses and say, I think detectives are the smart ones, right? That's why you're a detective, right?
Detectives are the smart ones.
Right. Well,
It almost implies that other people aren't smart, which is why I hesitated.
what I'm saying is detectives are the ones who get off the street and they go out and they investigate crimes. They use their brain. They think out on the street and they investigate these cases. Yes?
Yes.
So if you find something, then you go investigate further. Yes? This is not controversial. Yes?
When, in this particular instance, and in this particular case, when I was asked to call, for example, Jenna Ferris to get a statement from her and do what I can to get a statement from her, because at this juncture, we had already been trying to talk to her for several days and she wasn't returning our phone calls. So,
Time out. Would you not find that suspicious?
well, at this juncture in the case, Melody had retained an attorney who advised the family to stop talking to us. So yes, we were having challenges talking to the family because her attorney told them to stop talking to us.
You'd admit that was good legal advice, right?
I can't comment on legal advice because I'm not an attorney.
Thank you, Detective Kuykendall.
You're welcome.
But you never looked for surveillance footage, obviously.
I did not know, sir.
You were not tasked with that. You were not tasked with doing a phone dump of Chris Ferris, correct?
I did not dump Chris Ferris's phone. No,
You
sir.
did not dump Jenna Ferris's phone.
No, sir, I did not.
Nobody ever did, right?
I don't know.
Okay, you don't know. But you do know that you did dump Terry Brazel's phone, right?
I did not dump it, but we did get his consent when we were talking with Terry, and we went back to the free home precinct that his phone was forensically analyzed.
All right, so you did. That's just a neighbor, right?
It was somebody who was also friends with Melody, and when I was speaking with her, when I was asking her if she had anybody pursuing her or things of that nature, and it was kind of a long drawn out kind of questioning about other guys involved in her life to find out what other males might be around. Terry Braswell was the name that was mentioned. In addition, he shows up on her phone records in the time frame that we were investigating of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th. So talking with him and forensically analyzing his phone and getting a statement from him and looking at his phone records would have been something that this case would have involved.
But you spent more time with Terry Braswell than checking out the alibi of Chris Farris.
I don't think that that is a fair representation because I was specifically asked to talk to Janet, and I did, and she ended the phone call at that juncture. And I was asked to find out if Poke City would have video or not have video, which I did do. And in terms of Terry, when we were speaking with him, we had a number of things we were trying to get out of Terry. So we did speak with him for a little while and ultimately determined that dumping his phone would be a good course of action at that juncture, and he consented to it. So we did take him. Well, he drove himself to the free home precinct, and we met him there, and his phone was forensically analyzed.
So since you weren't tasked with things, and you got to help me with this structure, because again, it seems like there's just a lot of different people making calls, but nobody's really at the top making the ultimate calls and controlling this case. Who would have made the decision to dump Chris Farris's phone?
That would have been the case agent.
The case agent?
Yes, sir.
Can you say his name?
Detective Hayes.
Detective Hayes. All right. What about doing any cell phone tower searches of Chris Farris?
I don't know what cell phone towers were or weren't searched.
Okay. But you weren't tasked, obviously.
I was not tasked with writing a search
That's
warrant to dump
established.
cell
That's
towers.
established. I'm sorry. Moving on, you then interviewed a Joanna Newton.
Yes.
Who was that?
She's a neighbor whose property resides on kind of the backside, well, what I call the backside. Basically follow the road down, it kind of goes to a cul-de-sac, and her property's over in that area. So I did speak with her over the phone, but she wasn't home during the time frame that this would have happened.
All right. What
She wasn't
about,
home on the 3rd, 4th, or 5th at all, so she was out of town.
and you called the golf course at some point
I did.
that Scott was at.
I called the Hampton Golf Club because that was where Scott had said he went at 7:30 in the morning on the 4th, and I did follow up. I spoke with the Trevor Cross initially, and he walked me, and he was able to confirm that there was a 7:30 tee time that was scheduled by Ted. It was scheduled online. He was able to give me the pricing, how it was paid for. There was cash transactions and credit card transactions to pay for it. Part of it was paid online, part of it was in person. So they don't have video though, and I was able to speak to him, and he was able to confirm that the reservation was under the name Ted Pierce. And then a day or two later, Sean Kelly, who's the head golf pro, called and confirmed that he saw Philip the morning of the 4th as well. But they don't have any video there to obtain.
Did you go by and check, see if they had video? They just told you they didn't?
Correct.
What about tell me who Frank Allen and Portia Allen are?
They're across the street neighbors.
What did they tell you? There's something interesting there.
They had seen Gary on is basically what they called the side-by-side earlier in the afternoon down by the mailbox end of the driveway area. And they had also heard some fireworks in the area, I believe, as well.
Right. And did you get a timeline on those fireworks?
I
It's not in your
did,
report.
but I don't remember what day they heard fireworks. But everybody, it's the 3rd and the 4th of July. I'm positive people were shooting off fireworks in those time frames.
Wouldn't it have been a good idea, though, to maybe ask them that question about what time frame they heard the fireworks?
I did. I just don't remember what they said.
You didn't write it in your report.
That's
Okay. All right. So let's move on to another interesting character you ran across, John Lambert.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about John Lambert.
John Lambert works for, I'm going to get his company name wrong. I believe it's Home Innovation Technologies, something close to that. He services the automation systems in the houses. I was asked to call him, and I called him and spoke with him over the phone. He was able to clarify that he does not work on the security system in the house or the surveillance system in the house, so he wasn't able to assist with that because he doesn't service that. He services the other automated systems. He also said that he was at the house about a year earlier to do some of the service work. He met with Scott. He thought Scott was really odd, thought he was just strange.
Well,
And
if
also
it's
he
not his
reported
job,
hearing
that's how he
what
should
he
answer.
believed
Sorry,
were
not my
gunshots
job.
in the area of the
Not my
Purcell
responsibility.
Lane and Birmingham Highway on the 3rd in the evening hours at, I believe, 9 or 10.
That's what your report says. Yes?
I believe so, yes.
And so that was just a phone call with John Lambert, right?
Yes, sir.
How come you guys didn't set up an interview with him?
The information he gave is documented in my report, and not every conversation is recorded, and not every conversation necessitates bringing somebody in. I inquired further as to why he thought Scott was odd, and very simply, he referenced his military history as something that he just thought was strange. And also, Scott made a comment about while looking over the property, reference that one day, would all be his, and wasn't said in a nefarious or threatening manner. So it did not necessitate having him come in to tell me that further.
How come you didn't put that in your report about
Because-
Scott saying it would be his one day?
Because my report is a summary, and I did notate that John.
Adair, I'm sitting here watching y'all right now.
She did.
Okay. Thank you very much, Detective.
I'm paying attention to this trial. I'm not even
Okay,
paying
then you
attention to
went
Boone
and
right now.
talked to Joanne Ward on July the 24th. How did you wind up getting up with Joanne Ward?
I was trying to
actually
figure out how to
for a
spell
phone
his
call,
name,
so I called her and
hun.
spoke to her over the phone.
I'm dyslexic as hell, and I
Why
am
did
not
you- did you know
exaggerating.
why you were asking to call her?
You didn't get me,
Some
but
guy,
you're
do
going to
not
get me in a
remember
minute, and you may not like
why
what
I
you
was
get,
asked. I was
honey.
just called. She was somebody that
I'm an Irish
had
Cherokee
information,
Cree.
and I needed to call and see what she had to say.
What'd you learn?
I learned that she knew Gary from work, but they didn't work in the same law office. They just worked in the same building. And she said
This is
that
a
basically
prosecution.
they had kind of a flirty dynamic to their relationship, and they were talking and texting and emailing each other. And it was flirting in nature, but it never progressed past that because she was not inclined to want to go further with anything unless there was what I think she referred to as extenuating circumstances, I think the term she kept using. So Gary was not divorcing Melody or separated from her. So she didn't want to get into any kind of further relationship with him.
But she did note, or at least you noted in your report, that he did not wear a wedding ring.
Yes.
And then you also interviewed Angela Phillips with Eric Durlacher, and you never asked Angela Phillips whether or not she was having an affair with Gary, correct? That never came up in your interview.
I don't recall if I specifically asked her that question. I think that we did explore the nature of their relationship, and I don't think that's something that she ever offered up to us.
Okay. But you found out later that she called back and was interviewed again, correct?
I'm not aware of
You
exactly
didn't know,
what.
and then she revealed that they had a relationship in the 90s,
I think I had heard that, but it was like years later.
years later. But you didn't ask.
I don't recall if that's something that specifically came up in the interview. I don't recall if we directly asked her that or not.
So let's kind of get to what I want to ask you, and then I will sit down. I've not interviewed you or crossed you as long as I thought I would today, but you spent hours with Detective Hayes talking to Melody Farris, yes?
Yes, sir.
And in fact, you were the kind of the primary interviewer you were the good cop in the interview, yes?
I wouldn't say that we utilize any kind of good cop, bad cop strategy. We, at that juncture in the investigation, you have to understand this is less than 24 hours after Gary was found on the fire. The amount of information that we had at that time was rather limited. We simply were interviewing her to see what information we could get from her so that, again, we could get information, find evidence with that information, and get to the truth of what happened to Gary. When we talked to Melody, we were just trying to get that information that she had or what she would tell us. It was an effort to see what she would say. And as long as she was talking to us, we were getting information so that we could follow up with it.
But you were already accusing her of a murder.
I don't believe we ever specifically accused her of a murder in that interview.
And you spent hours and hours and hours with Melody, but you spent just a little bit of time with Scott.
I think we did speak with Melody for about 4 hours, but at a certain juncture, we were not in control of how that conversation necessarily ended. So the length of time is not entirely something that we had control over.
Okay. But you were taking information that you had gathered from Scott and Chris, and you were questioning her about the information that you learned from Scott and Chris. Yes?
That's partially true, but it's also information we had found. At the
I
scene
agree with you, SF
through
and Tex.
speaking
I
to-
totally agree with you.
Through talking to other family members, but also the scene itself, what we had observed, the projectiles that we found both in the house and in the decedent's body. And also the blood in the house and the movement of the tractor and things like this are part of the conversation. But also we wanted to know what information she had and what information she could offer us and what information she could give us, because we needed to know what knowledge she had about everything that happened on those days, because at the end of because she is the decedent's wife, she was at the house the night that in the time frames this could have occurred. And we needed to know if she saw anything suspicious, if she saw anything out of place, if anything had been moved, if she saw lights in the woods, if she saw somebody at the house, if she saw a suspicious vehicle. These are things that we would only know by asking her.
So you were also present for the dummy test. So I guess you'd kind of been removed from the case for a while.
Yes, sir.
How were you removed from the case, by the way?
I was retasked to do something else shortly after this case had transpired. So I went and did my job in another capacity. And I was asked to do some follow-up over time. The dummy test was one of those tasks I was asked to help out with.
All right. So you were asked to help with the dummy test. And there were two dummies. The dummy was shot in two different locations in the house, yes?
I'm not sure exactly where all the dummy was shot in the house. I was up at Scott's little area up there with one of Marshall's office people.
You were just
I went in the house briefly when we first got there, and I know they were setting up, but I don't know where all they put the dummy or shot the dummy or anything like that.
okay. So you're the one that found the bullet in the basement, yes?
Yes.
You testified to that. And the dummy was shot in two different locations in the house, yes?
I don't know how many places it was shot, or I don't know. I don't know where they put it. I wasn't inside the house when the dummy was shot. Sorry.
You were the second in charge detective on this crime scene on July the 5th. Where was Mr. Farris shot?
I can't testify to where Mr. Farris was shot.
You can testify to where you think he was shot.
I am not going to comment on what I think.
You need to answer the question.
I will comment on what we know.
I need you to answer, Judge. He's not answering the question.
Judge, it's technically
say you
an opinion.
No. Are y'all objecting to?
I'll let him answer.
Well, that's
That's
what I
fine.
expected
Yeah,
your
that's
response
fine.
was. Otherwise, you would have objected to it being speculative. But if you're not objecting, then he can testify to it
I'm
if he
fine
can.
with answering the question if he can. If he's comfortable.
Can you repeat the question?
You were the second in charge detective. Number 1, Hayes. Number 2, Kuykendall on the 5th. Yes?
I don't necessarily know if I could necessarily specify number 2. Was I assisting Detective Hayes? Absolutely.
Where do you think Gary Farris was shot?
I look at the evidence and I know that there's blood evidence at the top of the stairs going down the stairs, and there's blood evidence at the bottom of the stairs. And I know that a projectile was found in the flesh of Gary Farris, who was on the fire. And I know a projectile was found with blood on it in the basement. So those are the facts that are known. What conclusions can be drawn? Anyone can draw the conclusions from that, but I don't necessarily have I think this happened or my opinion is this, because we deal with fact, and those are the facts.
So you just don't know.
I can't testify that I know exactly where he was shot. No.
That's all I have, Judge.
Redirect.
I don't have any redirect, Judge, but we do have something we need to take up outside the.
All right. Well, we're going to take a break anyway, so y'all can step out.
Talk to the defense attorneys. We just were made aware of some information. I got emails and texts from Captain Hands and CID that I need to talk to the defense about, and I've never been in this situation.
It could be newly discovered evidence was substantial.
Sorry, guys. They had some good rollings going on over in the Sarah Boone.
All right,
It's already getting gnarly.
Are y'all planning on doing the Zoom with this
I
next?
want to get Addison in. She has to be, oh, they're gone. She has to be in before 1.
SF and Tex, I agree.
Okay, yes, she would be.
Y'all have
next.
another live witness.
After that,
We do, yes.
Y'all, but
Okay, one of the things I've always said about this case is I'm usually by this point off the fence, and I am still on the fence. I have not seen or heard anything that has nailed her, so to speak, down. So right now I'm still trying to figure out what I think. Let's roll the footage.
y'all's plan to do her next.
Addison next, Judge.
Addison will be next, yes. And then
Well, then we'll take I'll tell them we're gonna take probably a 20-minute break. If y'all need a little bit longer, let me know. That way we can get the phone call set up.
yeah.
Okay, we'll do that, Judge.
Y'all can
Let me
go
bring this.
wherever.
Are you going to?
Y'all need the conference room next door?
Judge, are you going to work on the technology?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we have the?
I've already got that set up.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't touch it.
If we could have the conference
Yeah,
room
right.
next door.
That would be good, Judge, yes.
Can y'all? Is the conference room next door?
Okay, guys, while they're on break for the next 20 minutes, if you want to hop on over to the Boone side, we gladly have you. Newly discovered evidence. I'm looking forward to this. They're getting ready to start opening statements. If y'all want to come join us, glad to have you. I'll let you know when they're back in jury so you can hop back on over. Thank you guys for waiting. I am so sorry, but court will be back in a moment. Let me refresh. Sometimes that helps. Okay. Thank you so much for waiting. Can't wait to see what the new evidence holds. In the meantime, let's hear a word from our sponsor. It's coffee. I promise. That's all. Hey, y'all, please help me welcome the Hitchman Homestead Coffee. They are fabulous. They have many different blends of freshly roasted, freshly ground coffee. They have a monthly club where you get 4 bags for $40 or a Keurig option. Also, they just came out with a half and half. Oh my gosh, I absolutely love it. So do me a favor, go down to the link below at hitchmanhomestead.com, order you some coffee and show them some love. And our second sponsor, thank you, As the Gavel Drops, for all of your wonderful court filing needs. If you love reading court documents, go to Discord and over to the As the Gavel Drops in Discord. It's free to join, and you will have access to all the documents you could ever want. Okay, guys, we'll be back. Well, it looks like we're getting back. Finally, yay! That was a really long break. I am so sorry. I am on hold with the Circuit County Court for Orange County because you can't hear the people in court because they're not on the microphone. So I'm calling the disabilities office to see if I can get them to get the freaking microphones on. Yeah, thank you. You're welcome. Okay, guys. So I'm anxious to see what's going on. Oh, I guess they're not coming back. But once again, thank you for holding. I'm ready to see what the new evidence is. What do you think it is? Comment below. What? Oh, now he's putting his robe on. He's a casual little cuss, isn't he? He's a casual dude. And he never zips it all the way up. Watch, watch. He won't do it. It'll be a parcel. Oh, see? What did I tell you? What did I tell you? Mhm. I told you. Oh, what are you practicing your airplane signaling landing? I really like this judge. Was it I'm anxious to know what the new evidence is. Okay, guys. So let's talk SF in at text. And of course, as soon as I'm sorry, I had a thesis I had to finish. Today is my last day of school. Tomorrow is my final, well, tonight is my final exams from online college. I am going to school to get a criminal justice degree with a focus on law. So I had to take care of that. I apologize, but do what you got to do. I will be working on it a little more later. It's okay, Haley Mouse. Thank you. So, my problem with this trial is there's just not enough. It's too circumstantial. The ex-boyfriend yesterday did her no help, but at the same time, he was a wash for me. If I was a juror, I would throw out all his testimony. I wouldn't rely on any of his testimony. Then, um, whatever this new discovered evidence is, I'm gonna be highly listening for. Sarah Boone is taking the stand. Oh, Lord, this is gonna be good. I'll let you know when she takes the stand. It'll be a week or so. Is the newly discovered evidence on the behalf was that presented by the defense or by the, prosecution, SFNX? F SF Texas. SF in Texas. Um, who was it still a prosecution side? Mm. Hi, baby girl. What was that? Oh, it looks like we're gonna have some video testimony or depositions. Woohoo. Well, baby girl, you need to go potty? Sorry, we do not have any volume in this court yet. She said she was. Okay, in comments right now, how many of you believe she's innocent or is she guilty? Let me know. Or are you on the fence? Hey, here we go.
All right, we're gonna get back started. We think we have found the gremlins and expunged them for now. Everyone believes that the issue is my Mac. I assured them that it's not the case, but they always want to, that's the first thing they want to try to eliminate when we start trying to get this to work. And basically it's the technology doesn't like, there's so many different pieces that are being plugged in. And when we're doing a hybrid hearing of some sort, bringing it outside or something, it's difficult and complicated. It worked fine back during COVID when we were all off-site and all on Zoom and we all had our own devices. And then it was just whoever's connection didn't work had the problem. And if, so anyway, we have rebooted the whole thing and basically decided, or I've decided that the best way to do it is for this, if we're doing someone remote, it needs to be the very first thing we do before we start switching inputs on the system, because that's when I think it goes sideways. With all that, Ms. Frankish, call your next witness.
Thank you, Judge. State recalls Addison Farris.
All right, Ms. Farris, you're previously sworn, so you're still.
This is her granddaughter. Excuse me, her granddaughter.
Pick up where we left off. Have a chance, and I think there might be a little bit of a delay, so I'm going to give you a second before you answer me. Did you have an opportunity to review your forensic interview? I believe it was in 2019.
I did.
Okay, and was that helpful to refresh your recollection?
It was.
Did you come to visit your father, Chris Farris, in the summer of 2018?
I did.
And specifically in the month of July?
Yes.
What date did you arrive in July?
We flew in the morning on Tuesday the 3rd.
And we provided you, I believe it was Riley 1, the calendar of July.
Yes.
Is that helpful to refer to as well?
It was, yes.
Okay. Who is we? You said we flew in. Who's we?
My sister Ella and I.
All right. When you flew in, what did you do? What was the first thing you did?
I don't remember the first thing that we did. I'm not sure what we did after we flew in.
Ultimately, did you go to your dad's apartment?
Yes.
Prior to going to his apartment, did you travel up to Cumming or the Alpharetta area?
I can't remember if we dropped, I know that we dropped Ella off in that area. I can't remember if we did that before or after.
After dropping Ella off, what did your dad do?
We went to my grandparents' farm. It's or Alpharetta. Yeah.
Okay, so it's in kind of northern Atlanta area. Is that fair to say? All right. Who lives at the farm? Who lived at the farm at that time?
My grandmother Melody, my grandfather Gary, they lived in the house, and then my uncle Scott lived above the barn.
When you and your dad went to visit, who did you see there?
We saw my grandfather and my grandmother. We didn't see Scott.
Okay. And what were they doing when you arrived?
My grandfather was outside, and my grandmother was inside, so she didn't come out until like I saw my grandfather first, and then I saw my grandmother.
And what did you do while you were there?
I don't really remember. I remember just I hadn't seen them in a while, so I remember like just giving hugs and them saying that I looked that like I was more grown up because they hadn't seen me in a couple months. I don't remember how long we were there, what we did.
At some point, did you communicate with Melody, your grandmother, that while you were there visiting?
Yes, I did.
Okay. So once you left the farm that evening, where did you and your father go?
We went back to the apartment, I think, and then I'm not all I know I went through my Snapchat memories, and I have a video at the ice cream place at 8 p.m. So I know that that's one thing that we did, but other than that, I'm not sure.
And that was the night of the 3rd?
Yes.
After seeing your grandparents?
Yes.
Did you spend the night at your dad's apartment that night on the 3rd?
Yes.
And do you remember if you slept with anyone or where you slept that night?
I don't remember.
Okay. Would it be typical for you to sometimes sleep with Jenna when you stayed over at your dad's apartment?
Yeah, usually.
So if you possibly may have stayed with her that night?
Yeah. So, I mean, I would sleep in the same bed as my dad sometimes. I would sleep in the same bed as Jenna sometimes. I didn't really like sleeping alone. I had nightmares, so.
Okay. The next morning would have been July 4th, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. What did you and your dad and Jenna do that morning? Or tell us about how that morning began.
I don't remember waking up that morning. Yeah, I mean, it was so long ago.
Sure. At any point, this is kind of a big event in Atlanta. At any point, did you possibly go and watch the Peachtree Road Race?
I do remember doing that. I remember walking down and standing there for a little bit, but I don't have a lot of details about it. It's pretty clouded. So.
Okay. Let's go to later that day. Do you remember anything about what you did on the 4th during the day?
I know that we went to the pool. I also have a picture of me at the pool on my Snapchat. And that was around 1 p.m. That we were at the pool.
At any point on the 4th, did you travel back up to the farm?
Not until I was dropped off to sleep over there.
Okay. Do you remember, and you don't have to give a specific time, was that early evening, early afternoon, late evening, to the best of your ability?
I think it was early evening or maybe late afternoon, but I'm not sure when we actually went.
Okay. Who took you up there?
My dad.
Was anyone else with you when your dad drove you up there?
I don't think so.
All right. And when you arrived, did your dad stay and hang out? Do you remember what that drop off was like?
So we went through Wendy's to get something to eat, and then I sat down at the table with Cameron and ate that and caught up with her. And I'm pretty sure, I think my dad came in for a couple seconds just to make sure I was settled, but if he did, it was short.
Did your dad eventually leave and you were there with Cameron and Melody?
Yes.
All right. Did you communicate with Melody? Did you have your own phone in 2018?
I did.
And did you communicate with Melody over that phone?
Yes, I texted her.
Okay. At this time, Judge, state moves to tender State's Exhibit AF1.
No objections? All right, go ahead. Submitted.
All right, Ms. Ferris, I'm going to show you an exhibit.
Exhibity. Is this the new evidence?
Okay, do you see
Nope.
that?
Yes.
Okay. And have you seen these before today?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Can you tell me whose number this is up here?
That's my number.
All right. And then you have this number saved as Melody Farris?
Yes,
All right. Is that who you're communicating with in these messages?
it is.
All right. If you could read text message, and I'm referring to this number over here, number 1 for me.
Hey, Cameron and I want to have a sleepover at the farm tonight. If it works out, would that be okay with you?
And what was the response you received from Melody?
How about tomorrow night?
Okay. And this is on what date?
That is on the 3rd of July.
Okay. And what was your response to her?
That's fine.
Okay. So moving down to the 4th. Did you, if you could read this message that you sent to Melody on the 4th?
Is a sleepover at your house tonight still on?
And what was her response?
Yes, sweetie, it is.
Okay. And you said, okay, great. And then we also have some calls right here. Did you and her kind of call back and forth that evening?
Yes, it looks like it.
Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing for right now. Okay, Addison, when you and Cameron got to the farm that night, what was it that you were looking to do while you were there? What did you and Cameron want to do?
I had a lot of things I wanted to do. I wanted to see the animals. I wanted to get in the hot tub because I think that was fairly new. And I wanted to drive the Kubota.
So in order to do those things, what did you and Cameron, did you need to have someone with you? Could you not drive the Kubota yourself? Tell the jury a little bit about that.
So the last time I had driven the Kubota when I was in Georgia, I crashed into a tree. So I was very nervous about driving it again, and I wanted to drive it with my grandfather because he had driven it with me before, and it made me feel a lot more comfortable driving it. So I wasn't going to drive it without him.
Could you find your grandfather?
No.
Did you actively look for him?
I believe we did, me and Cameron. We went down into his office to look for him, just like pretty much throughout the house, because I remember asking my grandmother where he was because I wanted to drive the Kubota, and she said that she didn't know and that we should maybe look around.
Okay. Did you ever find him?
Yeah.
Okay. Did you ever reach out to him on your phone?
I'm not sure.
So once you couldn't find him, what did you and Cameron decide to do?
We ended up sitting in the movie room, the TV room, and we just were on our phones and talking for a while. I think it was a couple hours that we were down there.
Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and share AF1 again. And at some point, did Melody text you to kind of clean up for the night?
Yes.
Okay. Is that what this message is here in number 11?
Yes.
Okay. And what time was that?
That was at 8:26 p.m.
All right. Did you guys go out on the property before getting in the shower?
So in my initial interview, I said something about seeing the goats, but I don't remember. I honestly don't remember. I know that in between the time of us being in the theater room and taking a shower, we didn't. But I don't know if there was any time before we were sitting in the theater room if we went out.
Sure. So then after you sat in the theater room for a while and went to clean up, what did you and Cameron do after that?
We hung out in the room upstairs for a bit and waited for my grandmother to fall asleep so we could get in the hot tub.
And did you do that?
Yes.
Did you check to see if how did you know she was asleep?
We kind of crept downstairs and I looked at her door and it was closed and she wasn't on the main level of the house anywhere. So I assumed that she was sleeping in her room.
And then you went in the hot tub.
Yes.
Okay. Well, you were out in the hot tub. I mean, was it dark? Was it bright? What was it like out there?
It was dark.
Could you see any flames or fires?
No.
Did you see any smoke?
No, but honestly, we were on our phones the entire time we were in the hot tub.
So you weren't really looking for smoke or anything like that?
No.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about your relationship with Melody prior to this. Did you know Melody to have multiple phones?
I did.
Okay. Did you ever ask her why she had another phone?
No.
Did you know why she had another phone?
I assumed that it had something to do with the rumors about her cheating on my grandfather, but I never asked. I never would ask her about that.
Okay. Would she use this phone openly in front of you?
So there was like I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
So, when you woke up the next morning on the 5th, well, what did you guys do after the hot tub?
We dried off, went right back up, changed into our pajamas, and went to sleep.
All right. What did you do when you got up the next morning?
I'm not quite sure exactly what we did. I know that we didn't get up for a while. I think we woke up pretty late. And we made the bed. I know that from my first interview. And then I called my dad and Cameron called Amanda. Because I think we were ready to be picked up.
Okay. What was the next thing you remember on that morning on the 5th?
I remember my dad. Amanda showed up first, and then my dad did, and they were pretty concerned with the fact that we couldn't find my grandfather. So it kind of turned, and then Scott eventually kind of joined. It was like a little search party. And we ended up just like searching all of the places on the property until we eventually found the burn pile. And then I went back up into the room upstairs.
Can you tell the jury a little bit about, or what you can remember of finding what happened when the burn pile was discovered?
So my dad, myself, and Cameron were on the Kubota driving, and we drove down through the woods a little bit until we kind of got to the burn pile. We weren't super close to it. I didn't actually see the burn pile, but I just saw my Uncle Scott and my grandmother standing on each side of the burn pile, and my Uncle Scott looked at my dad like he was like really pale, and he looked at him, and I think he said something about getting us out of there, or I don't know what he said, but because it happened so quickly. And then my dad turned the Kubota around and brought us back up to the house and told us to go upstairs and to not come out until he said we could.
And after that, were you kept apprised of everything that was happening after that, or were you not necessarily updated?
My dad wasn't texting me or anything. It was just me and Cameron up in the pink room. That's what we called it. It's the guest room that we stayed in. But it had a big window, so I could see, after a couple minutes, I could see police officers and paramedics walking by. And at that time I was on FaceTime with my sister, but I was kept in the dark. I didn't know what was going on.
Was that really the last involvement you had in the case?
Yes.
That's all I have for you, Allison. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Ray.
Good morning, Addison. My name is Michael Ray. I represent your grandmother. All right, I just got a few things for you, okay? And when you got to the house on the 3rd, you saw Gary driving the RTV, right?
I didn't see him driving it. I didn't see him driving it. I know that he was using it because he was working on the farm.
Yeah. And you had stated in your interview that he was burning recycle, you thought?
Yeah, that's what I remember. He was all sweaty and he had something that he was burning in the back of the Kubota. I don't remember what.
Okay. And do you remember? I know you were 11, I think, when this all when it happened. Do you remember what time you and your dad got to the farm?
I don't.
Do you think would it have been before or after you sent the text message to Melody about staying the night?
I think it was before.
So did you send the text message about spending the night before you got to the farm or after you left the farm?
I think I sent that text message after I left the farm.
Okay, so you and Chris went to the farm, and then your testimony is you sent the text message to Melody after you left.
I believe so, yes.
Do you remember how far is it from where you were staying at when you were here to the farm?
I don't remember.
Okay, that's fine. But anyway, so y'all set up the sleepover for July the 4th that afternoon, right?
I believe so, yes.
And I think Ms. Frankus had showed you the text messages.
Yes.
And showed your grandma responded saying, yes, sweetie.
Mhm.
Okay. Now, moving up to the 4th, you had stated, I don't think Ms. Frankus asked you, that you stated in your interview you went and saw the goats, but now your testimony is you don't know if you went and saw the goats when you got to the farm on the 4th.
I don't have any recollection of seeing the goats, so I'm not sure.
Okay, but you do understand, or you do recognize that you said in your interview that y'all went and saw the goats.
I do recognize that, yes.
Okay, because the DA's office sent you a copy of your interview, didn't they?
Yes,
Okay, did you listen to that interview?
I did.
Okay. Now, when you and Cameron started looking around, seeing if you could find Gary at the house, you didn't notice any blood upstairs or downstairs, right?
No.
You didn't notice any bullets in the basement?
No.
Okay. Didn't notice any gunshot holes?
No.
Didn't notice any? Didn't notice
We
any?
weren't looking for.
Oh,
I mean,
I'm just asking, but you didn't see anything either while y'all were looking.
No.
Okay. You didn't notice anything out of place in Gary's office?
No.
And then y'all hung out in the movie room for several hours before you went to get in the hot tub?
Yes.
Okay. And did you see in that text message, I think you said it was 8:26 when Melody said it's time to take a shower?
Mhm.
Okay. You got to say out loud. We can't.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're fine. Is that a yes?
Yes.
About 8:26. Okay. And then after everybody was, after y'all had both showered, Melody came downstairs to check on y'all and stated, let's settle in, and because she's going to go to sleep. Do you remember that?
I don't remember. There's only it's bits and pieces. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. But it was sometime between 9 and 10, you thought Melody was asleep, right? Because that's when you and Cameron went to the hot tub. And nothing out of the ordinary being in the hot tub.
No.
Now, on the 5th, when you woke up, Amanda got there first, correct?
Yes.
Did y'all have any plans that day, or were you just going to go, you and Cameron just going your separate ways, or did y'all have like a girls' day planned?
I don't remember having a girls' day planned. I don't think my dad would have come to pick me up if we had a girls' day planned.
Okay. Was your dad planning to come and pick you up before y'all started looking for Gary and all of those things?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Now, Amanda arrived at the house first, right?
Yes.
And y'all started looking around because she asked where your grandfather was?
Yes.
Okay. So now it's you, Cameron, Melody, and Amanda.
Yes.
Then eventually Chris and Scott.
I know.
Okay.
They were
Do you
hiding,
ever
Gabby.
recall hearing Scott saying anything about a missing gun?
No.
Now, you stated
Yeah, Ed Air, you're not on my last nerve.
they're the ones
I've
that,
got a lot of nerves.
essentially initiated the search. You
I'm
recall
told
that?
I had a lot of nerve.
Yes.
Mr. Ray, shift just a little bit so that she can see on the camera and the sound can also get you.
Oh, I don't got my glass. I'm assuming I'm up there. I can't
You
see
are.
myself.
Just
Can you hear me okay, Madison?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Chris and Scott initiated the search. You talked about that with Ms. Frankish. Hopping up to the two cell phones, you and Ella both knew about Melody having two cell phones, right?
Yes.
Okay. You would also agree with me that the Farris family in and of themselves, there's always a lot of drama going on.
You could say that.
There's a lot of gossip amongst the family members.
Most of it was true, which is
True. But you knew about the affairs too.
yes, everyone did.
Yeah, so everybody knew about these affairs. Let me ask you this though: did you know about Gary's affairs?
No,
Didn't? Had you ever heard the name Angela Phillips?
I have not.
Have you ever heard the name Joanne Ward? Okay. After you left on the 5th, I know you went home and back to the condo in Buckhead. You recall stating that your dad kept trying to get information about the case?
I don't remember.
Okay. Do you recall telling during your interview that your dad also questioned you about the case?
Yeah, I think I did say that. I'm sure he did.
Okay. Let me ask you this too. With because you weren't interviewed in this case until August of 2019, correct? Okay. Did law enforcement or anybody reach out to you while you were in Maine about interviewing you? Now, granted, I know you were 11 or 12 at the time, so to the best of your knowledge, do you know if they reached out?
I have no idea.
And so you weren't interviewed for a year later, over a year later. How often did you talk to your father in between that year, in between going back to Maine and coming back?
Our contact kind of fluctuates. Maybe once a week I would talk to him, but we didn't really talk about what happened.
Okay, so he didn't, once you had left and went back to Maine, he didn't talk to you about what happened?
No, not really.
Well, he had to talk to you about something, or your mom did, because you found out your grandmother was arrested, correct?
Yes, my mom told me about that. That's all the information that I was given, but that was through my mom.
Okay, but your mom had to learn it from somebody, right?
Yes.
I'm assuming, did she learn it from your dad, or do you know?
I have no idea.
Okay. Okay, that's all I got, Judge.
all right. Can you redirect?
briefly, Your Honor. Addison, when Melody texted you about having the sleepover the following night, what did you think about that?
I thought it was kind of weird.
Why was that?
She never said no.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Wasn't it, Addison, wasn't
Wait,
it,
get up there first.
wasn't it true that when you came down, that you were grounded?
No.
Action relevance?
Well, she said no. So.
Okay, yeah, there's no. With, and also just one other thing. When you got down here, y'all literally went straight from the airport, dropped off Ella, then went to the farm, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and it was after you left the farm, headed back to Buckhead, you asked about spending the night?
Yes.
Okay, no further questions.
All right, anything else?
No, no.
All right, thank you, ma'am. You can be excused.
Thank you.
She was on for the whole time y'all were on a break. While we were working on the equipment. All right, let's turn this off. Goodness. All right, y'all got anything else? All right, y'all need a break? Y'all good? All right, yes.
We just talked about one piece of evidence.
All right.
You need any water or anything up there, Ashley, or something? Raise your right hand. Yeah. Judge Matt McKenzie, okay, go ahead. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the evidence you're about to present in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do, sir.
Go ahead and have a seat. State your full name for the record, if you would,
It's Ashley Gordon Pope,
and spell it if you would.
ASHLEY.
Where do you work right in the morning?
I currently work for Cherokee Fire and Emergency Services as an arson investigator.
How long have you been doing that?
Been over there in November, it'll be about 5 years.
And before you worked as a firefighter or in the fire department, where did you work?
I work for Cherokee Sheriff's Office. I'm not a firefighter, I'm a fire investigator.
I apologize. Will they claim you as a firefighter or just an investigator?
I think you'll probably claim me as an investigator.
Before you were investigating fires, did you investigate crime?
Yes, sir.
When did you start at the sheriff's office?
Started at Sheriff's Office in January 2007.
Where did you go to the academy?
North Central.
How long was that?
I think it was probably 10 weeks at the time.
The jury's kind of heard how some people start out in the jail and stuff like that. Where did you
Yes,
start?
I started in the jail, worked in there about 18 months.
And then after you got out of the jail, what'd you do?
I was fortunate enough to transfer straight into Cherokee Narcotics, CMANS.
What is CMANS? What's that?
So Cherokee Multi-Agency Narcotics Squad.
And you're a narcotics investigator?
Yes, sir.
Now, when you were dope, as we say, did you learn a bunch of different skills?
Yes, sir, I did.
What type of things did you do when you were in narcotics?
I acted undercover. I managed informants. I worked street level narcotics. I worked drug trafficking organizations, things like that.
Did you have to go undercover at all?
Yes, sir. But the first year or so.
Did you get disheveled and brought your face, your beard, facial hair, and things like that?
Yes, sir.
Did you wear kind of dirty clothes at times and go and make drug deals?
Yes, sir.
Did you flip informants?
Yes, sir.
Did you work with informants?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury about that.
One of the key parts of working narcotics is developing information. That's done by utilizing people who are within the drug trade and cultivating them to become informants to provide information to further investigations and to cultivate other leads.
Now, when you work with informants, did you find that informants are people too?
Yes, sir.
And they have different personalities?
Yes, sir.
Some easy to talk to,
Yes, sir.
some hard to talk to.
But definitely.
Some need more persuasion or convincing to do something than others.
Yes, sir.
Now, if I were to ask you, based on the evidence in this case, if someone would say you were a good cop or bad cop, which do you think they would say you were?
I was definitely the bad cop,
Do you remember Rusty Barton?
distinctly.
Did you have an opportunity to talk with Rusty at times?
Yes, sir. I conducted a lot of conversations with Rusty.
If you look on that board right there, we've got some dates written down. Now, July 6, 2018, that Friday, the TBI interviewed Rusty. I don't believe you're involved in that. Is that right?
No, sir.
July 10th, 2018, July 24th, 2018, August 2nd, 2018, and then June 25th, 2019. Were those interviews that you were involved in?
Yes, sir.
During the investigation, though, before we get to the interviews, can I tell the jury just real quickly, what did you do when it came to Georgia side? Not the interviewing Rusty, but what you kind of do before you got there?
I was introduced to the investigation on that Friday, the 6th. I was requested to author search warrants and obtain search warrants to seize Gary Farris's bank accounts.
Now, you were a sergeant at the time in the sheriff's office?
Yes, sir.
And did you work with Detective Hayes?
Yes, sir.
Y'all not in college, were y'all friends?
Yes, sir.
Y'all kid, kind of give each other a hard time, but do y'all get along?
Yeah, I think we get along pretty good. We're friends.
And when you work together, do y'all have similar styles or different styles?
I think that we have complementary styles.
Okay. You have skills and he has skills, different, but both have the ability to do certain things.
Yes, sir.
Was he the lead detective in the case?
Yes, sir.
Where were you at in the chain of order or type of seniority in this type of case?
So I was a sergeant at the time of this. I was running a different unit within criminal investigations.
What were you doing there at that time?
I was over white collar crimes. Yes, sir.
Financial crimes and things like that?
Yes, sir.
RICO cases and whatnot?
Yes, sir.
All right. When this crime occurred, why were there so many people involved in this from law enforcement?
This was a grand scale investigation with a lot of parts in it. The property was large, but there's also a lot of moving pieces.
And at some point, how did y'all,
Yeah.
you got to the scene the day, July 5th, when Gary was found?
I do not believe I did. I believe the first introduction was on the 6th.
Did you work with Detective Kuykendall?
Yes, I believe that was the 7th on a Saturday.
Were you with him when y'all interviewed, was it Terry Braswell and Sherry Cooper?
Yes, sir.
What else did you do Georgia side in the case?
Georgia side, I did those interviews with Sergeant Kuykendall and the search warrants. I went to the scene at one time when they were closing out the search warrant.
And then maybe about a year later, I think we saw you in a video where they're doing some test fires.
Oh, yes, sir.
But is it fair to say that the main part that you did in this case was trying to convince Rusty to give you some information?
Yes, sir.
All right, so let's talk about that.
Yes, sir.
July 10th and July 24th, during those, were those the introductory interviews with Rusty?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury when you first met Rusty, how did he come across to you?
Rusty kind of presented himself as a typical kind of Southern guy that grew up in a rural town. He presented as a salesman, as somebody that was distinctly and immensely loyal to people, and that he lived a life based off his reputation.
Was he from that small town, that area in Tennessee?
Yes, sir.
When you first met with him, did you and Hayes have a kind of a plan of what y'all were going to do to see? Did you know how receptive he was going to be to law enforcement?
We did make some deductions by listening to the July 6th interview when we were driving from Cherokee County to Tullahoma. It's about a 3.5 hour drive.
What did you cull from that interview when it came to what it was going to be like?
Well, when Detective Hayes and I was developing our strategy, I noted something very specifically in that interview, that when TBI agent Williams kind of challenged Rusty on some things, that he said she was pushy. So Detective Hayes and I decided that it would be a good strategy and a good tactic for me to be the bad cop and for him to be the good cop.
Now, did it come natural to you?
I must admit it. I can access it when I need to.
When you met with Rusty, tell the jury about how, At what point did it trigger with you that you're like, I've got to do something to see if I can get some more information from him?
Well, it was predetermined by Detective Hayes and I that the first chance that I got to be the bad cop, be that arrogant, assertive cop in the challenging, we were going to do that. And that related to cell phones.
At some point, did you ask Rusty whether or not you could look at his cell phone?
Yes, sir, I did.
Do you remember what you said to him about that?
Pretty fair. Yeah, pretty accurately, I think I do.
Did you ask him a question about if he was innocent?
Yeah, I asked him along the lines of say, hey, you've told me you're innocent. If you're innocent, you'll let me look in the phones.
Was his phone with him at that time?
No, sir, it was in the truck.
And eventually, did he let y'all look into the phones?
Yes, sir, he did.
And did you, during, I guess, one of the interviews, like, did you try to get into the phone through a kind of some software that we had called Cellbrite?
Yes, sir. On that evening, on the 10th, I tried to.
Tell the jury what Cellbrite is.
Cellbrite is a cell phone extraction device that you can hook up almost any type of phone to, and it will extract all kinds of data out.
When did you try to use Cellbrite to get the contents off of his phone?
I tried to utilize it during the course of that interview.
Did it work?
No, I was having trouble with it.
At any point, did y'all try to ask him if he would consent to bring his phone so you could download it at the sheriff's office?
Yes, we did ask him. We asked him to come down and bring it to the sheriff's office so a better person could use the Cellbrite.
And eventually, in this case, was his phone taken and downloaded using Cellbrite?
Yes.
Judge, this time on material evidence, State's Exhibit A Pope 1. It's a extraction report from cell phone from Rusty's phone.
No objection.
When you were talking to Rusty, during your conversation with him, did you ask him whether or not he had done anything in the phone regarding this case or anything like that?
Yes.
Did you learn whether or not he had deleted anything or was trying to delete anything?
We had learned that he had deleted a contact, Melody's contact.
Did he also rename her contact at some point?
Yes, sir. I believe he did.
Did you ask him whether or not, did y'all talk about whether or not he had any plans to marry Melody or anything like that?
Yes, we did.
You remember what he said?
Said yes. They had talked about plans. There was some conversations about whenever Gary was no longer in the picture, that they would have for lack of better terms, a certain like grieving period, and then they would come together and get married.
Did you ever ask him or confront him with the fact that he was searching for wedding bands?
Yes, sir.
And what did he say to that?
He agreed that he was searching those because they had made arrangements to get married in the future.
Let's go through. Is your computer screen on there?
Yes, sir.
Can you see it?
Yes, sir.
All right, this is what I want to do is I go through A Pope 1. This is the redacted. You see where it's got numbers, and this is not everything off the phone, just some things for trial, but search items, I'm talking about, I guess, basically 17 here. Do you see on this exhibit, there's a number column on the left side here?
Yes, sir.
You see the value here, where it talks about what was searched for?
Yes, sir.
And then this here has a time stamp. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
As we go through these, is it correct that this is July 9, 2018, and then it goes to the last two are June 28th of 2018. Do you see those dates?
Yes, sir.
So this would be things that he searched on his phone.
Yes, sir.
Our first one talks about, what is that?
Just busted.
And Safari, what is that on your phone?
That's a search engine.
So the first couple of ones here, all the way through nine are just, I guess that was news things related to the case. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
All right, there was a search done on the 10th one here on July 9, 2018. What was searched for?
SF and Tex, you were so right.
number can they
Hey,
get
can you
all
give
your
me
text messages?
sort of an idea where you live? You don't have to tell me the town.
I guess that would be several searches. And then,
Yes, sir.
and then 16 and 17, what were those searches for?
Plain gold wedding band both days or both times.
Now, number 16 and number 17, for the record, can you just tell us the date and the time that those were done?
It's June 28th, 2018, 7:07 p.m. And
June
then-
28, 2018. And Gary's remains were found on July 5th, 2018.
Yes, sir.
I'd have to do the math. The week before, I guess, is when this search for wedding rings was done.
Yeah, 7 days maybe.
All right. One thing I'm all right, here we go. I'm on page 10 of this report.
Yes, sir.
Number 29 for search items. Here is the body, what was looked for. What is the value there? What does it say there?
If the police have your cell phone number, can they get all your text messages?
And there are several searches for that, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And then 36, it's a link on the internet that he was doing. What is the box here? What does that say?
How police can get your deleted texts, like they got Kyle Navins.
And then 38, the web history there. What is this one?
If the police have your cell phone number, can they get all your text messages?
And these are things that came up during his searches that he was doing?
Yes, sir.
When you were talking to Rusty, did you, as the investigation developed, did y'all ever have to come back to him and get him to clarify more information?
Yes, sir.
What ways did you do to try to get him, to convince him to give y'all more information?
We just stated the seriousness of the situation. We leaned into the tactic of good cop, bad cop. So,
did you let him know the serious nature of the case?
yes, sir, the serious nature of the case, the situation and how things were evolving.
Did you let him know it was a murder case?
Yes, sir.
Possibly, in y'all's mind, a death penalty case?
Yes, sir.
Did you explain his position in the case and how y'all felt the evidence, how it related to him?
Yes, sir.
Did you have to talk to him about that on July 24, 2018? After you talked to him on the 10th, I think the 10th was like a couple interviews, is that right? Y'all broke it up, it was long.
We broke it up, but it was one long interview.
On the 24th, is that when he told you about the statement he said Melody told him about Gary being in the burn pile?
Yes, sir.
Now tell the jury, when y'all arrived to talk to him, did he just walk out to you that morning and say, here, let me give you this information? How did it actually develop?
No, he did not give us that information. The beginning part of the interview, Detective Hayes and I, once again, I'm playing the tactical bad cop. I start presenting with evidence with some intensity, and at that time, his lawyer paused the interview and they stepped outside of the room and had a conversation.
Intensity, let's tell the jury, don't use the words here.
Yes, sir.
Did you drop the F-bomb a lot?
Occasionally.
MF?
Occasionally.
You were cussing?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever get in his face, anything like that?
I got close to him.
Did you ever point at him or anything like that?
Yes, I did.
But did you ever touch him?
No, sir.
Did you
Absolutely not.
Did you ever threaten him with any harm or anything like that?
No, sir.
Did y'all ever have to be separated physically or anything like that? You have to go outside and everybody calm down and you come back together or anything along those lines?
No, sir, but there are times that I left the room for effect.
What do you mean by that?
Well, as being the aggressive one and being intense, you want to create opportunity for him to talk to Detective Hayes. So you can't always be intense in his face the whole time. You want to create an environment where he will talk to Detective Hayes.
Have you been through the interviews and interrogation classes in law enforcement?
Several, sir.
Have you been involved in like the read technique and things like that?
I've been to some classes where they teach tactics like that.
Through your training experience, have you learned how to interact with people and do things like you talk about to see if you can get them to come across and give you more information?
Yes, sir.
Do you ever do the technique where you take a nice approach and you get up and sit beside and put your arm around them and tell them you're a friend and they can get it off their chest, things
Yes,
like that?
yes, sir.
Do you do, I guess, have you got even more aggressive than you did in this case?
I have, but not to the point of ever putting my hands on anybody.
How aggressive do you think you were with Rusty?
How so?
If you would say 10 is a fist fight and 1 is a normal conversation like we're having, where was you?
6 or 7.
After you would talk to him, would he eventually give you more information?
Yeah, Detective Hayes and I discussed that was what he responded to. So much so his lawyer even made some comments to me.
Was his lawyer there at the time that all the times y'all talked to him?
Yes, sir.
What was his lawyer like? Very smart guy?
Oh yeah, his lawyer is very smart, very charismatic, very likable, and a very experienced lawyer that had worked on federal prosecutions and things like that.
Now, don't tell us what he said because
No, sir.
there's rules for that. But did y'all at times would you meet with the lawyer and Rusty would be somewhere else?
And on this date, there was a period, yes.
And did y'all sit around at times and just, even with Rusty being there, did it undulate? Did kind of pressure would go up with everybody and then it'd come back down to normal and y'all would kind of talk and nobody screaming or yelling or anything like that?
Yes, sir.
And would Rusty do that? Would he come back and actually have a conversation with you?
Yes, sir.
Now, did y'all talk about, I think you like coffee, don't you?
Yes, sir.
Did you have to actually stop the interview sometimes and go get some coffee in Tullahoma?
Yeah, that was a little bit of effect too. I wanted to leave Detective Hayes and them together, and I do like coffee. So,
where'd you go get coffee? You remember?
Celtic Coffee, I believe, was the name of it.
How big is Tullahoma? Can you compare it to a city that we all know?
Oh, it's a small town. It's very similar to the town I grew up, probably 10, 15,000 people, something like that.
Did you and Rusty, everybody talk about that Tullahoma and you didn't have a good place to get a meat and 3 sides?
Yes, sir.
I mean, did y'all talk about food?
Yes, sir.
Was that in the context of all these interviews and things like that?
Yes, sir.
Now tell the jury, I don't think I'm wrong, but tell the jury, during these intense conversations with Rusty where he gives information, I'm being a little facetious.
Yes, sir.
At some point when he does talk to you and after he tells you about what he says in the burn file, y'all end up sitting around just eating candy?
Yes, sir.
Do you remember what kind of candy it was?
I didn't remember until I refreshed my memory, but I know I didn't want to eat the watermelon candy. I remember that being on the.
Was anybody eating watermelon?
I can't remember, but somebody was.
Was everybody, you, Rusty, Detective Hayes?
Yeah, we were all together, even as lawyers.
Where were y'all sitting at?
At a conference table in the lawyer's office.
And would he get you drinks and things like that?
Yes, sir.
Do you find it to be a pleasant environment for the most part?
Yes, sir.
Now, I think on August 2nd, did y'all come up with some, I call them fake arrest warrants, but maybe it wasn't, did y'all use some arrest warrants with Rusty?
Yes, we did.
Tell the jury about that.
We, on that date, after some conversation and debate, we went and presented him with some information because we had developed some instincts and some conversations had been occurred that we thought Rusty was potentially trying to play both sides.
In fact, did you confront him also at that same time about the recorder y'all had given him to use?
Yes, sir, we did.
And what did y'all think he was doing with the recorder when it came to telling the defendant something?
Well, it was revealed that he had told her about the recorder after we had given him instructions.
Would you give Rusty instructions and he would agree to things, and then you found out that's not really what he was doing?
Yes, sir.
So did y'all confront him about the recording?
Yes, sir.
Initially, did he tell the truth about the recording that he didn't tell her?
No, sir. I think that's a good example too of me. I stepped out of the room for Detective Hayes to have a conversation with him.
Eventually, did he admit that he did tell her and was lying to y'all about not revealing it?
Yes, sir.
And did y'all talk about getting him to record calls on a Calio system?
Yes, sir.
And tell the jury what I mispronounce it or I say it wrong all the time, but it's Calio. That's Calio. What is that system?
I don't want to try to pronounce it because I mispronounced it, but yeah, it's an app that you can put on the phone that records conversations, and it also sends that to us real time, so we can listen to it.
And when you got Rusty to agree to do this, what was your confidence level that he wasn't going to tell her that he would or would not tell her that he's recording the calls?
I believe we were confident that he wouldn't, but that changed as the interviews and conversations occurred.
After the defendant was arrested, she was arrested on June, I think, 18th, 2019. That next week, June 25th, did y'all go back up and meet with Rusty and his attorney?
Yes, sir.
And at that point, when you walked in, and at that point on the 25th, did you know where he stood with Melody, how he felt about her?
He was still in a relationship with her.
Did you ask him whether or not they had talked around in person the recordings?
Yes, sir.
Did he admit he did?
Yes, he admitted. He described that they had got a cell phone just for them, that each had got a cell phone number just for each of them to talk around that nobody knew about.
Now, at the time that he was recording these phones with the defendant, obviously you had the defendant's phone number, is that right?
Yes, sir.
You knew Rusty had a phone, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
But did you know they ever had other burner phones?
No, sir.
Did you find out on the 25th whether or not Rusty got other phones?
Yes.
And did he tell you why he got those phones?
To purposely talk around so we wouldn't be able to monitor conversations.
On the 25th, did he, after y'all, is the procedure, I guess the development of that day correct? Y'all confirmed about the phone numbers, meeting in person, going outside on new cell phones. Then did he say he had something he wanted to clarify?
Yes, sir, he did.
And is that when he recanted the July 24th statement?
Yes, sir.
How did that make you feel?
I kind of thought Rusty was selling me something that I wasn't willing to buy.
And
I didn't believe it.
And at that point, did y'all part ways?
Yes, sir.
And it pretty much was it over with Rusty at that point?
Yes, sir.
Now, as the case has developed and when it came to recordings that we have, was that basically what we talked about? Was that your role in this investigation?
Yes, sir.
And when you were working to do these things, like going up to Tennessee and dealing with Rusty, you said people were advising, was that your superiors in your office?
It's a team effort. We're always coming back to the office, kind of diagnosing what we have and explaining where we're at.
And at the time, were you working with the district attorney's office, or was it mainly just the sheriff's office y'all were communicating?
It's mainly the sheriff's office.
So the things that y'all were doing, that was brainstorming among the sheriff's office?
Yes, sir.
And in this case, and I'm not trying to say his name or anything like that. I just want to make clear that when you were working with prosecutors in this case, Ms. Frankish and myself were not in the case originally.
No, sir.
It was someone else.
Yes, sir.
But your interaction with the DA's office, because did you talk to Rusty about talking to the DA's office?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
But you never promised him anything, did you?
Absolutely not.
Did you tell him that you could not promise him anything?
Yeah,
I'm not sure, Andriel.
Did you explain that you can talk to
I kind of
the
got
DA's
stuck
office,
too.
but you have no control over anything?
Yes, sir.
And you understand as in law enforcement that can you lie to a suspect?
You can.
And when you lie to a suspect, why can you do that?
Just to measure their truthfulness. We know facts about the case that they don't
They can lie and
Sometimes
trick
you do
you.
that to see if they will say something true.
occasionally.
But when you lie to them, are you lying to them for the purpose of getting a true statement from them, the truth?
Yes, sir.
And the last thing I want you to do is I want to make sure the jury knows this. On the 24th, when Rusty talked about the burn pile,
Yes, sir.
and he did give you more information, did you follow your training experience to make sure that you made it clear to him you're not trying for him to make a case or tell you anything you want to hear, you're just after the truth?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury how you would do that.
Well, I would explain to Rusty and his lawyer while he's present that it's important for him to give us statements that we can try to vet or try to deem credible.
When you were talking with Rusty, did you at any time, in any way, try to lean on him just to give you any information, even if it's not necessarily true, so you could use that against the defendant?
Absolutely not.
What were you after?
The truth.
Nothing further. Afternoon, y'all. Good afternoon. I'm John Luke Weaver, along with Michael Ray. I represent Melody Farris.
Okay. Good afternoon.
And I will be quick. But you
Yes,
were
sir.
you were in Seaman's, right?
Yes, sir.
What year to what year?
2019 to beginning of 2013.
You mean 2009?
Oh, excuse me, 2009 to 2013.
Okay, all right.
Yes, sir.
And so, and you went to school for interrogations
Yes, sir.
before Seaman's or after Seaman's?
During Seaman's.
All right. So, because in a lot
But
of,
I had previous, just to touch on that, I've had previous interview training prior to working at the sheriff's office.
prior to that, what was that?
That was in the United States Coast Guard and U.S. Customs.
Okay. So you've been doing interrogations for a long time.
At the point of this, yes, sir.
Sure. All right. So how did you get into this case?
I got involved initially.
If anybody
on
wants to
Friday
skin him, Miss
to
Jules is going to call me on the break for the Boone trial.
Who asked you to do that?
I believe it was Sergeant Hands.
Okay. And how did you wind up getting kind of volunteered to go up to Tennessee?
Well, before that, it's an all hands environment where we're trying to get everybody that you can. So I had been asked to go with Trent Kuykendall to do the interviews with Sharon and Terry Braswell.
All right.
So then that progressed into me assisting Detective Hayes.
Okay. Did you volunteer? Did Hayes say, hey, come on?
Like I said, we were having conversations and I did volunteer.
Okay. Because you got experience in this kind of thing.
Because I got experience and Detective Hayes and I have complementary styles.
Y'all done this before. Okay.
We have done interviews. Yes, sir.
So just real quick, wedding band searches. Now, you were aware, were you able to find out through any of these interviews that he was dating another woman?
He was.
All right. So it's possible that he was doing wedding band searches for her too.
I disagree.
So you say it's absolutely not possible.
He made statements that would lead me to believe that it was for Melody.
Okay.
We
But-
specifically asked him about that.
But he is dating another woman at the time.
He was.
All right. And when did you use the threat of the death penalty?
It wasn't a threat, sir.
All right. What did you say about the death penalty?
The death penalty, what I said in that this was an evolving case and that Rusty was in a situation to provide information. As it progressed, if there was information that led that it was premeditated or other evidence, that it could be considered a death penalty case.
All right. And you said that to him.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then as this investigation progressed, you provided a false warrant where his name was on it, right?
Yes, sir.
And it was a warrant for conspiracy to commit murder.
Conspiracy to commit murder and concealing the death, I believe.
And you guys, and this is it's always interesting. I don't think most people know this, but I'm going to ask it. So he said, you can lie to suspects and people that you're questioning, right?
Yes, sir.
But if they lie to you, then they've committed a crime, correct?
Possibly.
That's all I have, Judge.
You ready?
Yes, if I may. Let me make this clear. July 24, 2018, that's in the burn pile conversation that Rusty said, right?
Yes, sir.
Tell the jury what day y'all, to the best of your memory, what day did y'all present the arrest warrants to Rusty?
That was on August the 2nd.
after that date.
Yes, sir.
And counsel asked you, could you lie to someone and can they lie? And basically it's not fair. You would agree though that if a suspect lies to you, they're lying to cover the truth, right?
Yes, sir.
And you're using a law enforcement technique to actually get to the truth.
Yes, sir.
Nothing further on.
No follow-up.
All right, you said that.
All right, thank you, sir.
All right, is this a good point to break for the day? All right. And we're gonna stick with our plan to do other stuff the rest of the afternoon. All right, y'all are excused for the afternoon. Y'all can have lunch on your own and do whatever you want to for the rest of the day, except look up anything about the case, talk to anyone about the case, Google anything about the case, etc. Y'all have a good weekend, and we'll see you Monday morning, same time, between 8:30, 8:45. We'll be up and running by 9. All right, y'all can be excused. Go Dogs.
Yep, hook 'em horns.
Our plan to do other stuff the rest of the afternoon. All right, y'all are excused for the afternoon.
So, with the Melody Walker Farris trial, we're going to see if they're going to do anything on camera. If not, we will end this trial and y'all can hop on over to the Boone trial. Haven't had a whole lot of testimony yet. Basically, there's thuds and noise and screaming and drinking. Yeah. Well, as a makeup artist, it is so hard because I just want to go and fix her makeup. It's not so much, the flavor. I'd have no problem with flavors. That is the suitcase, I believe. I have no problem with the flavors. It's just the synthetic sugar in it that gives me the migraines. I can't do it. I really need to get off of them completely. I just like things super cold or coffee hot or cold. I'll drink it cold. So, over here on the Melody Walker SF in Texas, hook 'em horns. Yes, I live in that area. Definitely lived in that area. So, yay. We need to do a Texas meetup this fall. Flash for Fan 85. How's it going? Just came in to show some support. Well, thank you for your support, love. Greatly appreciate it. Everybody, please hit the like. It really means the world to me. If you are not subscribed, please go ahead and subscribe. If you put I sub, you get an entry in for the Starbucks tumbler. And if you join a membership starting at 99 cents, you get 10 entries with a maximum number of 11 entries, drawing to be held on October 31st. Yes, I feel more ice and coat. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Give me the ice. She probably doesn't care, and yeah, she doesn't care. So, okay, I think hold on, guys, I'll be right back. I'm going to end my other live. Okay. Melody Walker Farris trial is on break for the rest of the day. Thank you so much for joining me. Appreciate it. Please come over to the Sarah Boone trial that just started. Andrielle, Adair, Gabby, SF in Texas, all of you, Paula MC, please come join us. We look forward to seeing you. Until later, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Please comment, like, share, and most importantly, subscribe. I hope you have an awesome day. Till next time, take care.